As the night gently settles around us, we begin a quiet journey through the timeless story of Atalanta, a woman whose legend was shaped by the wild, the untamed, and the untouchable. Born under the shadow of prophecy, she was cast aside by her father, only to be nurtured by nature's embrace, growing strong and swift like the winds of the ancient forests. Her story is one of adventure and defiance, of choosing one's own path in a world that often tries to impose limits. Atalanta's life unfolded like a race against the world itself, fast, fierce, and filled with a deep connection to the earth she roamed. Tonight, we will trace her footsteps from the solitude of the wild to the halls of heroes, and in each chapter, you will find the quiet strength of a woman who carved her own destiny. With each word, feel the world of ancient Greece unfold, soothing and calm as you drift through the moments of her life, one by one. Relax, breathe deeply, and let Atalanta's story gently guide you into sleep, where her legend lives on, timeless and serene. Like, subscribe, and share where you're listening from. Let us journey through the quiet whispers of her myth together. In the quiet, secluded forests of Arcadia, where the ancient trees stretch their limbs to the sky and the winds whisper through the leaves, the story of Atalanta begins. A tale whispered by the gods, hidden away in the folds of time. Her birth was not like others. In a time when daughters were often seen as less than sons, Atalanta's arrival was greeted with sorrow, for her father, King Iasus of Arcadia, had hoped for a son to carry his name. But fate had other plans. In his disappointment, Iasus abandoned his newborn daughter on the mountainside, leaving her to die in the cold, uncaring embrace of nature. But nature, as it often does, had its own way of shaping events. A she-bear, strong and maternal, came upon the helpless infant. Instead of cruelty, the bear's heart was filled with compassion. She gathered the baby in her arms, cradling her as though she were her own. The wilds of Arcadia became Atalanta's first home. She grew not in the ways of man, but in the ways of the earth, learning the language of the birds, the movement of the streams, the quiet whispers of the trees. As the years passed, Atalanta became something of a legend. Her speed and strength, unmatched by any mortal, became the stuff of stories told around campfires. She was no ordinary girl. She was a force of nature herself. In the quiet solitude of the forest, she learned to hunt, to run, and to survive. Her heart beat in rhythm with the land, her every step leaving a gentle mark on the earth. The animals of the forest knew her well, and, in return, she respected their ways. In the cool shade of the trees, Atalanta would race the wind, her legs moving in a blur of grace and power. She had become one with the world around her, her spirit untamed, wild like the forest itself. Her heart, though it had been abandoned by her father, had found its place in the embrace of the wilderness. In that sacred space, Atalanta was free. Free from the constraints of society, free from expectations, free to follow the whisper of the trees and the call of the earth. But even the wildest heart cannot remain untouched by the world forever. As the whispers of her legend spread beyond the forest's edge, word of the abandoned girl in the wild reached the ears of her father. King Iasus, hearing of the mighty huntress who had been born to him, sought her out. His pride, now mingled with a sense of guilt, led him to find her and bring her back. Though Atalanta had lived among the animals and the wind, her father's call beckoned her to return to the human world, to the place where her lineage awaited her. Her return to civilization was not one of joyous reunion, however. The people of Arcadia, though they marveled at her strength and beauty, whispered behind her back. They could not understand the wildness that resided within her. The women saw her as a threat, the men as an anomaly, and Atalanta felt her heart heavy with the weight of their judgment. Yet, despite their harsh words, she remained unbroken. In her there was a quiet resolve, a strength that came from the land itself, and she would not let their fear dim the spark of freedom that burned within her. Atalanta's return to the world of men was not one of peace. Her father, though he welcomed her, saw her strength as something to be tamed, something to be used. But Atalanta, ever defiant, refused to bend to his will. She was a daughter of the wild, and no crown nor title could change that. She would not live in the shadow of expectations. She would run, she would fight, and she would live as she chose. Her return was but the beginning of a new chapter in the tale of Atalanta, one where her legend would only grow stronger as she faced challenges and opportunities that would test her strength and will. Yet, in all of it, she remained true to herself. The world around her may have changed, but her heart, her spirit, remained as untamed as the wilds that had raised her. As the winds of Arcadia continued to whisper through the trees, Atalanta's journey was just beginning. And though she would face many trials, the wildness in her would never fade. For Atalanta, the forest had been her first home, and it would forever be a part of her, even as she stepped into the world of men. Atalanta's story unfolds like a song carried by the winds, soft, steady, and eternal. After being abandoned on the desolate mountain, she became the adopted child of a she-bear, an unexpected and yet fitting guardian. The bear, strong and maternal, nurtured Atalanta with the care of nature itself, teaching her the rhythms of the wild. It is said that she roamed the dense forests of Arcadia, a place where oaks stretched to the heavens and the land hummed with the power of ancient magic. Here, Atalanta was free, her spirit, untethered by the demands of society, thrived under the care of her new mother. The she-bear's teachings were simple, yet profound. Atalanta learned the ways of survival, the art of hunting, and the quiet grace of the forest. Each morning, as the sun's first rays broke through the canopy, she would run across the hills, her feet swift and sure, her heart beating in time with the earth beneath her. The forest was her companion, its sounds, its sights, and its smells guiding her every move. She understood the language of the birds, the rustling of the leaves, the flow of the streams. The animals of the forest, with their quiet lives, accepted her as one of their own. Atalanta learned to move like the deer, with elegance and speed, and to track like the wolf, with keen eyes and silent feet. As the years passed, the girl grew into a woman, but she remained as untamed as the land that had raised her. Her bond with the she-bear was unbreakable. The bear was both protector and teacher, and Atalanta's respect for her foster mother was unwavering. Together, they hunted, roamed, and explored the forests of Arcadia, an inseparable duo, as much a part of the natural world as the trees themselves. In those quiet years, Atalanta's strength grew as well. Her body became sculpted by the demands of survival, her muscles honed by the constant need to adapt and thrive in the wild. Her mind, too, was sharpened by the solitude and the lessons taught by the bear. She learned to navigate the unpredictable world around her with calm precision, sensing danger long before it arrived and striking with the accuracy of an arrow released from a bow. There was no fear in Atalanta's heart, only a deep, profound understanding of the world around her. She had no need for human society, no desire to be shaped by its rules or expectations. The forest was her home, and in it she felt a sense of peace that could never be found in the bustling streets of Arcadia. The gentle hum of nature was all the music she needed, the soft rustling of the trees and the quiet calls of the birds serving as her companions. In this place, she was not a girl abandoned by her father, nor a daughter without a place. She was Atalanta, a child of the wild, and that was enough. Yet, despite the beauty of her life in the forest, there were moments when Atalanta felt the pull of something greater. As the seasons changed, so did the world around her. She grew restless, sensing that her journey was not yet complete. The forest had given her all it could, and though it remained her sanctuary, there was a longing deep within her heart, a desire to find her place in a world that lay beyond the trees. It was not long before whispers of Atalanta's existence reached the ears of the people of Arcadia. Tales of the wild girl who could outrun the swiftest deer and who moved through the forest with the quiet grace of a predator spread like wildfire. The legends spoke of a huntress unlike any other, a woman whose strength and beauty were rivaled only by the fierceness of the forest itself. She became a figure of myth, a creature of the wilds that both intrigued and terrified the people. King Iasus, Atalanta's father, hearing these whispers, sought to bring his daughter home. Though he had once abandoned her, the thought of a mighty huntress as his child stirred something within him, a mixture of pride, guilt, and desire to reclaim what he had lost. With a heavy heart, he sent messengers to the mountains, requesting that Atalanta return to the kingdom. Atalanta, for her part, was hesitant. She had no love for the world of men, no desire to return to a life shaped by human hands. But there was a quiet tug in her heart, a curiosity, perhaps, or a sense of duty to the family she had never known. And so, she made the journey back to Arcadia, leaving behind the wild and the she-bear, the only family she had ever known. Her return was not a joyful reunion. Atalanta, strong and unyielding, was a stark contrast to the soft, delicate women of the royal court. She was wild, untamed, and free, and the people of Arcadia did not know what to make of her. They were afraid of her strength, of the power that radiated from her every movement. She was not like the women of the court who were meant to marry and bear children. No, Atalanta was something else, something more. Her father, King Iasus, welcomed her back, but even he could not fully understand the force of nature that had shaped his daughter. Despite their fear, Atalanta's presence in the court was undeniable. She was a living testament to the power of nature, a reminder of the wildness that lay just beyond the edge of the city. Though she was out of place among the gilded walls and delicate manners of Arcadia, she stood tall and unbowed, her spirit as fierce as the mountain winds that had raised her. Though her heart longed for the solitude of the wilds, Atalanta knew that she was destined for something greater. She had not been brought back to Arcadia by chance. Her path was leading her towards something, a challenge yet to be faced, an adventure yet to be had. The world beyond the forest was waiting for her, and she was ready to meet it head on. Atalanta's return to civilization was not one of celebration, but rather a quiet, reluctant step back into a world she had long left behind. For years, she had roamed the vast forests of Arcadia, her home and sanctuary, a place where the wind carried the voices of ancient trees and the river murmured secrets only the wild could understand. Her life had been one of freedom, governed by the rhythms of nature and her own instincts. The quiet of the forest had shaped her, and her strength had grown as wild and untamed as the land itself. Yet, despite her reluctance, the summons of her father weighed heavily on her heart. King Iesus, having heard the legends of his daughter, the wild huntress who roamed the forests with the swiftness of a deer and the strength of a lion, could no longer ignore the daughter he had cast aside. His heart, filled with a mixture of guilt and pride, called to her, and he sought to bring her back to Arcadia. And so, Atalanta made her way down the mountain, leaving behind the familiar embrace of the wild. As she descended, she felt the earth beneath her feet shift, the soft whispers of the forest growing fainter with each step. The winds no longer sang to her, the trees no longer swayed in her rhythm. For the first time in many years, Atalanta felt the weight of human eyes upon her. Her arrival at the gates of Arcadia was met with a mixture of awe and fear. The people, having heard the stories of the wild huntress, could hardly believe their eyes when they saw her standing before them. She was unlike any woman they had ever known, tall, strong, and unyielding. Her eyes, sharp and piercing, held the quiet confidence of someone who had lived without the need for the approval of others. Her body, sculpted by years of surviving the wilderness, radiated power. She was no dainty maiden, but a woman of strength, the very embodiment of the wild forces that had raised her. King Iesus, overwhelmed by both pride and guilt, embraced his daughter, but Atalanta could not help but feel the distance between them. Though he was her father, there was something about him that seemed foreign. The rules of court life, the whispered politics, the expectations placed upon her as a woman. These were not things Atalanta had ever been taught to navigate. She had known the simplicity of the forest, where every movement had purpose and every sound had meaning. The noise of the court was disorienting to her, and she felt like an outsider in a world that had never truly been hers. Atalanta's return to the palace was marked by the quiet stares of the women who lived there. They watched her with a mixture of envy and fear. Atalanta's beauty was undeniable, but it was a beauty that was raw, untamed, like the wild animals she had lived among. She was not like the soft, delicate women of the court, who had been trained in the arts of beauty and charm. Atalanta's beauty came from strength, from the earth beneath her feet, and it made the women of Arcadia uneasy. They did not understand her, and in turn, Atalanta did not understand them. She soon realized that in the world of men and women, her strength was both a blessing and a curse. While the men of the court looked upon her with admiration, they also saw her as a challenge, a force to be reckoned with. Her presence unsettled them, for they had grown accustomed to women who were meek and soft. Atalanta was different. She was fierce, and her spirit was untamed. She did not fit the mold of what was expected of women in this world, and as a result, she was both revered and feared. Her father, though he welcomed her return, did not fully understand her. King Iesus, a man who had once abandoned his daughter, now sought to shape her into a woman who could be molded by the expectations of society. But Atalanta was not one to be shaped by anyone but herself. She was not a woman to be confined to a life of marriage and domesticity. Her heart belonged to the wild, and no amount of royal expectations could change that. Despite the pressure to conform, Atalanta did not bend. She remained steadfast in her independence, refusing to let the confines of court life define her. And yet, as much as she longed to return to the wild, she knew that her place in this world was not yet finished. There were challenges ahead, and though she may not have fully understood them, she could feel them stirring within her. The call of the hunt was strong within her, and though the forest lay far behind, the world of men held its own dangers. Dangers that Atalanta could face with the same strength and courage she had honed in the wild. Her journey was far from over, and as she stepped into this new chapter of her life, Atalanta knew that she would never fully belong to this world. She would always be a daughter of the wild, her heart forever entwined with the earth, the trees, and the winds. As the days passed in the royal court, Atalanta's legend continued to grow. The people marveled at her strength and beauty, but it was the quiet power within her that left the deepest impression. She was no ordinary woman. She was a force of nature, unyielding and untamable. And the world around her could do little but watch in awe as she moved through it. Her return to Arcadia was not the end of her story, but rather the beginning of a new chapter, one that would take her beyond the gates of the palace and into the realms of adventure, danger, and, ultimately, self-discovery. The wilds of Arcadia still called to her, but Atalanta knew that her path was now entwined with the fate of the world. And no matter how much she longed for the solitude of the forest, her journey was one that she would have to face with courage, strength, and the unyielding will to remain true to herself. Atalanta's return to the royal court was only the beginning of her path into a world that had once felt foreign to her. As she settled into the uneasy rhythm of the palace, her reputation grew. The people of Arcadia marveled at her beauty, her strength, and her untamed spirit. Though she was a woman, she moved with the power and grace of the forest, a figure unlike any other. Yet, despite the admiration and whispers, Atalanta could not escape the call of adventure. It wasn't long before the land of Caledon found itself plagued by a great and terrible boar, a creature born of chaos and fury. The wild beast ravaged the countryside, tearing through crops, killing livestock, and instilling fear in the hearts of those who lived near the forests. King Oeneus of Caledon, desperate to protect his people, called upon the greatest hunters of the land to join him in a hunt to rid his kingdom of the monstrous creature. The hunt for the boar was to be a grand affair, and soon word spread that all the great heroes would come to participate. The news reached Arcadia, and Atalanta, ever the wild huntress, felt the pull of the challenge. Her heart, wild and untamable, knew that this hunt was meant for her. The call of the hunt, the challenge of the boar, was a summons she could not ignore. Despite the expectations placed upon her as a woman, Atalanta was determined to prove herself in a world that had long sought to define her. Her father, King Iasus, did not fully understand her desire to join the hunt. He tried to dissuade her, concerned for her safety, but Atalanta's resolve was unshakable. She had known the wild, and she understood it better than any man ever could. Her heart belonged to the forest, and the boar was a challenge too great to resist. With quiet determination, Atalanta set out for Caledon, ready to prove her worth among the greatest heroes of the land. Upon arriving in Caledon, Atalanta was met with curious stares and whispered comments. Many of the hunters, Both men and women had heard of her strength and beauty, but none knew quite what to make of her. She was not a typical participant in hunts such as this, where men were usually the ones to wield the weapons and face the dangers of the wild. But Atalanta was not one to be intimidated by the opinions of others. She was there to hunt, and she would do so with the same fierce determination that had defined her life. The hunt began at dawn, the first light of the sun breaking through the trees and casting a golden glow over the land. The hunters, armed with spears, bows, and knives, spread out through the forest, each determined to be the one to slay the great boar. Atalanta, with her sharp eyes and quick instincts, moved silently through the underbrush, her body blending with the natural world around her. She was one with the forest, and it responded to her with quiet understanding. The boar was elusive, its massive form barely visible as it charged through the trees, leaving destruction in its wake. The hunters pursued it for hours, but it was Atalanta who found the creature first. She tracked it with a focus born of years spent in the wilderness, her senses heightened by the rhythm of the earth beneath her feet. She could hear the boar's grunts, its movements, and she knew the time had come to face the beast. In that moment, Atalanta stood at the edge of the clearing, her heart pounding with anticipation. The boar charged toward her, its tusks bared and its eyes wild with fury. Atalanta did not flinch. She raised her spear, steadying herself as the creature neared. With a swift, practiced motion, she threw the spear, the weapon cutting through the air with deadly precision. The boar's charge faltered as the spear found its mark, wounding the beast. The hunters, seeing Atalanta's skill, rushed forward to finish the hunt. But it was clear that she had already proven herself. Her speed, her strength, and her unwavering focus had made her the hero of the hunt. The boar, though mighty, had been no match for her. The men, though they had fought alongside her, could not deny that it was Atalanta's spear that had brought the beast down. Her name, once whispered in awe, now rang out with respect. The hunters, though initially reluctant to acknowledge her prowess, could not help but admire Atalanta's skill. She had proven herself in a way that few could, and the legend of her strength grew even greater. The people of Caledon, who had once seen her as an outsider, now saw her as a hero in her own right. But for Atalanta, the hunt was not about glory or recognition. It was about the challenge, the thrill of the chase, and the connection to the wild that had shaped her. In the quiet moments after the boar's death, as the hunters celebrated their victory, Atalanta stood alone, her heart calm, her spirit at peace. The hunt had been won, but the forest still called to her, its whisper a reminder that her journey was far from over. In the days that followed, Atalanta returned to her life in Arcadia, her name now etched into the annals of history. She had faced the great boar, and in doing so had proved herself not just to the men who doubted her, but to herself. Her strength was not defined by the expectations of others, but by her own fierce will. And though she had earned the respect of the hunters and the people of Caledon, Atalanta knew that her path was still unwritten, her story still unfolding. The hunt for the boar had been a moment of triumph, but it was only one chapter in the long and winding tale of Atalanta's life. She had faced the wild and come out victorious, but her heart still belonged to the earth, to the freedom of the forest, and to the untamed spirit that had guided her since her first steps. The world of men may have accepted her, but it was the world of nature that would always be her true home. The hunt for the Caledonian boar was a turning point in Atalanta's life, not just because of the victory she achieved, but also because it forged a bond that would become integral to her story. Among the many hunters who had gathered to defeat the beast was Meleager, a hero of the land whose name carried the weight of noble lineage and military success. Atalanta had met him before, perhaps only in passing, but the boar hunt brought them together in a way neither had expected. Meleager was a man of both passion and pride, his warrior spirit matched only by his sense of honor. He was not unfamiliar with glory, and his reputation as a mighty hunter preceded him. But when Atalanta entered the hunt, her presence cast a new shadow over him. She was not just another warrior. She was an equal, if not greater. He had heard of her before, whispers of the wild huntress who had been raised by a she-bear, the woman who could outrun any man. But seeing her in action, watching her bring down the mighty boar with such ease, made him recognize something in her that he had not expected, a shared spirit. It was not love that formed between them, nor was it rivalry. It was respect. In the heat of the hunt, as the boar charged and the spears flew, their movements aligned in perfect harmony. They understood each other without words, as if the wildness in both of their hearts spoke a language that transcended the need for communication. In the midst of battle, there was an unspoken bond, an understanding that they were both, in their own ways, shaped by the land, and that their fates were intertwined, even if only for a fleeting moment. When the boar was slain, it was Meleager who took the final blow, but Atalanta's role was undeniable. She had helped in the chase, her spear finding its mark and weakening the creature enough to allow the final strike. The other hunters, having witnessed her skill firsthand, began to acknowledge her as one of their own. Yet there was one who took particular notice of her, the one who had not only fought alongside her, but had also shared a deeper, unspoken understanding, Meleager. In the days following the hunt, Atalanta and Meleager spent time together in quiet companionship, as if their bond had been forged not in the heat of battle, but in the calm that followed. They would talk, not of the hunt, but of the land, the forests, the creatures they had both come to love. There was something about their conversations that felt natural, as if they were two pieces of the same puzzle. Meleager was fascinated by Atalanta's ability to live as one with the wilderness, while Atalanta admired his bravery and leadership. Neither of them felt the need for grand gestures or declarations. They simply existed together in a space of mutual understanding. But even in the calmest moments, the world had a way of shifting beneath their feet. Atalanta had never truly belonged to the world of men, and though she respected Meleager, she could not shake the feeling that the forest, her true home, was still calling to her. Meleager, too, was torn between the love of his homeland and the adventure that called him to the farthest reaches of the world. Yet, it was not just the bond of friendship that connected them. There was a deeper, almost unspoken understanding of what it meant to live in a world shaped by expectations that neither of them fully embraced. In the midst of this growing camaraderie, Atalanta's presence in the hunt began to stir tensions. Her role in the Caledonian boar hunt, though crucial, did not sit well with everyone. The men, though they respected her abilities, still saw her as an outsider. someone who did not belong in the world of heroes and warriors. There was a quiet discomfort in the air, one that only seemed to grow as Atalanta's name became more widely known. She was no longer just a huntress. She was a woman whose reputation was growing beyond the confines of Arcadia. Despite the admiration she received, Atalanta could not escape the fact that her place in the world of men was uncertain. She had never sought fame or glory, yet it seemed to find her wherever she went. The tension between her desire for freedom and the expectations placed upon her continued to grow. Meleager, too, began to feel the weight of these expectations, as he was pulled deeper into the politics of the court and the lives of the powerful. In quiet moments, Atalanta would often slip away from the crowded halls of the royal court and return to the forests she had known since childhood. The land, with its quiet solitude, seemed to call to her, offering comfort and solace. Meleager, though he was tied to the world of men, would sometimes join her, and together they would walk in silence beneath the trees, their hearts at peace. It was in these moments that Atalanta felt most alive, when the noise of the world faded into the distance, and it was just the two of them, walking beneath the ancient canopy of Arcadia. But even these peaceful moments were fleeting. The pressures of court life, the expectations placed upon them both, would soon pull them back into the world they could never fully escape. Atalanta, though she longed for the freedom of the forest, knew that her fate was now intertwined with that of Meleager. They had shared something that few others could understand, a bond forged in the wilds, where strength and honor were not defined by titles or status, but by the quiet will to survive and thrive in a world that was ever-changing. As Atalanta and Meleager's friendship deepened, so too did the understanding that their paths would eventually diverge. For Atalanta, the forest would always be her true home, but the world of men was calling her to something greater. She could not remain in the quiet solitude of the woods forever. And Meleager, though he had found a kindred spirit in Atalanta, knew that his own journey was just beginning. The two of them had shared a moment in time, a fleeting connection that would remain in their hearts forever. But the world was vast, and their paths were destined to lead them in different directions. The boar hunt had come to an end, and Atalanta's place in the world of men had been solidified. Her role in the hunt for the Caledonian boar was unquestionable. She had proven herself a warrior, her strength and skill unmatched by even the most seasoned hunters. Yet, as the days passed and the creature lay dead, a sense of unease settled over the group. The boar's demise should have been a cause for celebration, a triumph over a monstrous force. But it was not the end of the hunt that would define the story. It was the dispute that followed. The boar's carcass was brought back to the royal palace, where the spoils of the hunt were to be divided. As tradition dictated, the prize would go to the hero who had dealt the final blow. But Atalanta, as a woman among men, found herself caught in the complexities of this tradition. Though it was clear she had played a pivotal role in the hunt, the other hunters were hesitant to award her the same honor they would a man. When it came time to claim the spoils, the argument began. Meleager, having dealt the final blow to the beast, was first to claim the prize. Yet Atalanta's role in the hunt could not be ignored. She had wounded the boar with her spear, and without her precision, the creature would not have been brought down. The men, some out of respect and others out of pride, debated the matter among themselves. Meleager, ever the warrior, sought to settle the matter by offering the prize to Atalanta, acknowledging her contribution to the hunt. His actions were born not of obligation, but of genuine respect. Atalanta had proven herself in the wild, and her strength had made her an equal in the eyes of Meleager. Yet, not all of the hunters shared this view. A group of men, angered by the idea that a woman might claim the prize, rose in opposition. They argued that Atalanta's place in the hunt, though significant, was not enough to warrant such an honor. It was a tense moment, and the air grew thick with disagreement. The men, caught between their respect for Atalanta's skill and the traditions they held dear, found themselves at odds. The dispute escalated, and before long, the honor of the boar's kill became a source of deep conflict. The quarrel did not end with words alone. In a fit of rage, Meleager's uncles, who had been among the dissenters, sought to take the prize for themselves. The tension in the room, already palpable, reached a boiling point. Meleager, his anger fueled by the disrespect shown to Atalanta, lashed out. In a swift moment of fury, he killed his uncles, a tragic act that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Atalanta, standing at the center of the storm, watched in silence. The quiet woman who had once been a daughter of the wild now found herself in the midst of a violent dispute between men. It was a moment that would change the course of her journey. She had never sought violence, nor had she desired to be caught in the webs of human politics. But in that moment, she realized that even the strongest hunter could not escape the consequences of the world they inhabited. The death of Meleager's uncles, though a result of his anger, would not go unpunished. King Oeneus, though initially sympathetic to his son's cause, could not ignore the bloodshed. The royal court was shaken by the events that transpired, and the consequences of the dispute reached far beyond the walls of the palace. Meleager's once promising future was now tainted by the act of murder, and the kingdom of Calydon would never be the same. Atalanta, though untouched by the violence, felt the weight of the events that had unfolded. The forest, her true home, seemed more distant than ever. The world of men, with its complexities and struggles, was a place she could never truly belong. She had sought adventure, and she had found it, but it came at a cost. Yet, even in the wake of tragedy, Atalanta's spirit remained unbroken. She knew that her journey was far from over, and that her place in the world was still to be determined. The hunt for the boar had been a victory, but it had also been a reminder that the world of men was fraught with conflict. Atalanta could no longer ignore the tension between her desire for freedom and the expectations placed upon her. She would have to find her own path, one that would lead her beyond the confines of human society into the vast, untamed world that still called to her. As the days passed and the kingdom of Calydon recovered from the bloodshed, Atalanta knew that the events of the hunt would haunt her. The violence that had erupted over the boar's kill was a reminder of the fragile nature of human pride and ambition. But in the quiet moments that followed, Atalanta found solace in the knowledge that she could never be swayed by the same forces that had driven the men to conflict. Her heart belonged to the wild, to the land, and no amount of human strife could change that. Atalanta's place in the world of men was now sealed, but it was not the world of politics or power that she sought. It was the world of nature, of the hunt, and of the quiet strength that lay in the heart of the forest. The next chapter of her journey awaited, and though it would take her far from Caledon, Atalanta would face it with the same strength, courage, and independence that had defined her from the very beginning. In the wake of the boar hunt and the tragic events that followed, Atalanta's life continued to unfold in ways that could never be predicted. Though she had proven herself time and time again as a formidable hunter and warrior, the world around her was not content to simply admire her strength. As her reputation grew, so too did the expectations placed upon her. Expectations not just as a warrior, but as a woman. Atalanta, however, had no interest in the traditional roles that society had carved out for women. She had never desired the comforts of marriage, nor had she longed for the companionship of a man. The forest had been her home, the wilds her family. But as her name spread beyond Arcadia, suitors from all corners of Greece came seeking her hand, each one eager to claim her as their own. Yet Atalanta was not one to be claimed. She was not like other women of the court who were expected to marry and bear children. No, Atalanta was a force of nature, untamable, wild, and free. She had no desire to be bound by the traditional constraints of marriage. Instead, she declared a challenge. Any man who could outrun her in a race would win her hand in marriage. It was a bold statement, one that reflected her fierce independence and her unwillingness to be defined by the expectations of others. The race, she declared, would be her test. Those who sought to claim her would have to prove their worth by matching her speed. The prize, though a coveted one, would not be given freely. Only those who could keep pace with her in the race would earn the right to her hand. It was a challenge that would test not just the strength of the men, but their courage and determination. The news of Atalanta's challenge spread quickly, and soon suitors from all over Greece arrived to compete for her heart. They came with hopes high, their hearts set on victory. But none of them truly understood the level of competition they were about to face. Atalanta, after all, was no ordinary woman. She had been raised by the wild, her speed and agility unmatched by any man. She had run with the wind itself, and her heart beat in rhythm with the earth. The men who came to compete were strong, yes, but they were not prepared for the power of nature that flowed through Atalanta's veins. The day of the race arrived, and the suitors lined up at the starting line, their eyes fixed on the woman who would determine their fate. Atalanta stood before them, her stance calm and confident, her eyes shining with determination. She was not nervous. This was her element, and she knew that no one could outrun her. As the signal was given, she took off, her legs moving with the fluid grace of a predator on the hunt. The men tried to keep up, their strides long and powerful, but Atalanta's speed was like nothing they had ever encountered. She was a blur of motion, her body moving in perfect harmony with the wind, the earth, and the sun. As the race continued, it became clear that none of the men stood a chance. Atalanta's lead grew with every step, her body seeming to glide over the ground. The suitors, though determined, were no match for her. They were heavy with their armor, burdened by their pride, and it quickly became apparent that they would not catch her. Yet one man, Hippomenes, refused to give up. He was a prince, brave and proud, and though he knew he could not match Atalanta's speed, he had something none of the others possessed, a cleverness born of wisdom and strategy. Hippomenes had sought the help of the goddess Aphrodite, who, seeing his determination, granted him 3 golden apples. These apples, gleaming and magical, would be his only chance to win the race. As Atalanta surged ahead, Hippomenes did not try to outrun her. Instead, he used the apples as his weapon. As they ran, he tossed one of the golden apples onto the path ahead of them. Atalanta, seeing the gleam of gold, slowed momentarily to pick it up. With a flash of speed, she caught up to Hippomenes, but he had already thrown the second apple, further down the track. Again, she slowed, unable to resist the allure of the golden fruit. And with each distraction, Hippomenes drew nearer. The race continued, and Atalanta, though fierce and proud, could not deny the cunning of her competitor. She had never been one to stop in the midst of a race, but the apples, bright and irresistible, had distracted her. As the finish line loomed ahead, Hippomenes, using the final apple, managed to pull ahead, crossing the finish line just before Atalanta. He had won the race. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Atalanta, breathless and exhausted, stood at the finish line, her heart pounding with a mix of frustration and awe. She had never been defeated in a race before, but in that moment, she realized that it was not just speed that had won. Hippomenes had used his wit, his cleverness, and his strategy to win her hand. And while Atalanta may have been frustrated by the loss, there was a part of her that admired him for it. Hippomenes, in turn, stood before Atalanta with respect and humility. He had won the race, but he knew that it was not just his victory, it was theirs. Together, they had shared a moment of competition, of mutual respect, and of understanding. Atalanta, who had never sought a husband, found herself drawn to the man who had won her heart, not just through his speed, but through his mind and his determination. And so, Hippomenes and Atalanta were united. Their marriage was not one of tradition, but of mutual respect and admiration. It was a union forged not in the confines of societal expectation, but in the shared understanding of two people who had both tested their limits and come out stronger for it. Yet even as Atalanta stood beside her new husband, her heart remained torn between the world of men and the call of the wild. The forest still whispered her name, and the winds still called her back to the freedom she had known for so long. But for now, she was bound by a new challenge, a new journey, one that would take her far from the quiet solitude of the wilds and into the complexity of love and companionship. After the race, Atalanta and Hippomenes were united, not by the conventional customs of their world, but by a bond forged through mutual respect and admiration. The race had been a test, a trial that measured not only their speed and strength, but their minds and their resolve. Hippomenes had triumphed, not through force, but through cleverness and strategy, earning Atalanta's hand in marriage. Yet, for Atalanta, this union was not one she had sought, nor one that had come easily. Though Atalanta's heart had been drawn to the wilds of Arcadia, the world beyond the forests had a way of calling to her. She could no longer live in solitude, nor could she deny the presence of another who had come to understand her strength. Hippomenes, with his wisdom and determination, was a man who could meet her at her level, a partner who respected her independence while also offering companionship. Their marriage, however, was not without its complexities. Atalanta, though bound by the terms of the race, was never truly one to be tethered by the roles society had set for women. She was not a woman defined by the rules of matrimony or the duties expected of her. She was a huntress, a warrior, a woman who had been raised by the wild, and though her heart had been won by Hippomenes, her spirit remained untamed. She was bound to him, yes, but not in the way that society had expected. She was a partner, an equal. Her identity was not lost in the union, but was instead honored. Their marriage was marked by love, but also by challenges. Atalanta could never fully escape the call of the wild, nor did she wish to. There were moments, quiet moments, when she would slip away from the comforts of their home and return to the forests she had known. In those moments, she could breathe deeply, feeling the earth beneath her feet, the trees overhead, and the whisper of the wind. It was in these moments of solitude that she felt most herself, untamed, free, and wild. Hippomenes, understanding Atalanta's connection to the wild, never sought to constrain her. He loved her not for her beauty alone, but for her strength and independence. He had won her hand through the race, yes, but he also understood that she could never be fully claimed. Instead, he stood by her, supporting her as she sought to balance her marriage with the life she had always known. Their bond was one of mutual respect. Two people who, though different in many ways, shared an understanding that went beyond the traditional roles of husband and wife. But as with all tales of love and fate, even the strongest of bonds is not without its trials. The gods, who had watched Atalanta and Hippomenes from afar, had their own plans for the couple. While they were united in love and strength, their union was not to go unchallenged. The gods, particularly Aphrodite, had their own designs for their fates, designs that would test the strength of their love and the endurance of their bond. One day, while Atalanta and Hippomenes were traveling together, they stopped at a sacred temple to honor the gods. The temple was dedicated to Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, and the couples sought to give thanks for their marriage and the love they had found in each other. But as they entered the temple, a strange feeling settled over them. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, as though something greater than themselves was at work. Unbeknownst to them, Aphrodite had been watching. She had seen their love, their strength, and their defiance of the world's expectations. And though she had granted Hippomenes the victory in the race for Atalanta's hand, she was not content to let their union be without consequence. For in the eyes of the gods, love was never simple. It was a force to be reckoned with, and those who dared to defy the natural order of things would be tested. As Atalanta and Hippomenes offered their prayers to Aphrodite in the temple, the goddess's anger began to stir. Aphrodite, displeased with how the couple had acted in her domain, cursed them in a way that would forever change their fates. She transformed them, not into animals, but into creatures bound by her will. Two lions, their bodies strong and powerful, but forever tied together in a bond that could not be broken. In that moment, their human forms were stripped away, and they became part of the very forces of nature they had once defied. Their transformation was swift and painful, and as they lay upon the ground, their forms shifting and changing, they realized that their bond had become eternal. The love they shared had been powerful, but it was now bound by the will of the gods. No longer would they walk as humans in the world. Instead, they were to roam the earth as lions, forever together, forever connected by their love and the will of Aphrodite. Though their forms had changed, their love did not waver. The bond they shared was unbreakable, and even as they took on their new forms, Atalanta and Hippomenes remained as they had always been. Two souls intertwined, destined to be together for eternity. The curse that Aphrodite had placed upon them was not one of punishment, but one of immortality. They would forever roam the earth as symbols of love, strength, and the unpredictable will of the gods. And so, Atalanta and Hippomenes became legends in their own right, not just as heroes of the hunt, but as a testament to the power of love, both its beauty and its challenges. Their union, though marked by the will of the gods, remained a love story that would endure through the ages. The gods, though they sought to shape the lives of mortals, could not take away the essence of what made Atalanta and Hippomenes who they were. Two spirits bound by the land, by the wilds, and by love. Atalanta and Hippomenes had once been two warriors, bound by a challenge of speed, respect, and mutual admiration. Their love had been forged through competition, built on the foundation of shared strength and understanding. They had fought side by side, hunted together and run together, and their bond was one that transcended the rules of the world. But no matter how strong their love, fate and the gods, it seemed, were determined to test it. As the days turned to weeks and the weeks to months, Atalanta and Hippomenes continued to live as lions. Their human forms had been stripped away by Aphrodite's curse, but the love they shared remained untouched. Together, they roamed the wilds of the earth, their bodies powerful, their spirits untamed. They had become something else, symbols of the eternal bond that could not be broken by time or the fickleness of gods. However, even immortality comes at a price. While Atalanta and Hippomenes had once been fierce and independent, they now faced a new struggle, the loss of their freedom. As lions, they were powerful, but they were no longer masters of their own fate. The forest, which had once been their sanctuary, now felt like a prison, its vastness a reminder of the world they could no longer roam freely. They had become part of the earth's natural order, but they no longer belonged to it in the same way they had before. The once untamed spirit of Atalanta, the huntress who had run with the wind, began to feel the weight of her new existence. She was no longer the free woman of the wilds, but a creature bound to the will of the gods. Her strength was still there, but it had been channeled into something else. She had been turned into a lion, a symbol of strength and power, but she was also now a prisoner, shackled by a fate she could not escape. Hippomenes, too, felt the weight of their curse. He loved Atalanta with all his heart, but he could see the sorrow in her eyes. She had been the fierce, independent huntress who had lived for the thrill of the chase, but now she was bound to him in a way she had never expected. The bond they shared was eternal, but it was not the kind of freedom they had once known. Their love, though unbreakable, was now a source of pain, for they could never again return to the world they had known. It was then that the gods, ever watching, decided that the time had come for the couple to pay the price for their defiance of their natural roles. They were not meant to live as they had, free, wild, and independent. The gods had decided that they must be punished, and punishment came in the form of the transformation they had both endured. While the couple had become immortal in their new forms, they were also condemned to a fate far more tragic than death. Their bond, once a symbol of love and strength, became a symbol of eternal suffering. For despite their undying love, they would never again be able to experience true freedom. They would never again run through the forests as they had once done, nor would they ever again experience the joy of a race, the thrill of the chase, or the quiet peace of solitude. And so, the gods, in their wisdom and cruelty, decreed that Atalanta and Hippomenes would remain as lions, bound together in eternal life, but with no escape from their fate. They would never know peace, never know rest. Their love, though powerful, had come at a cost, and now they would bear the weight of that cost for all eternity. The years passed, and the couple roamed the earth, a pair of majestic lions whose beauty and strength were only overshadowed by the sadness in their eyes. They had become symbols of both love and sorrow, their story whispered through the winds and carried on the lips of those who knew the tale. The once great huntress and her beloved, transformed by the will of the gods, were now nothing more than legends, immortal, untouchable, but forever trapped in their curse. But even in their eternal form, Atalanta and Hippomenes were not entirely defeated. For even in their cursed state, their bond endured. They may have been transformed, but the love they had shared, the connection that had brought them together in life, could never be taken from them. The forest may have been lost to them, and their freedom taken, but they were still two souls, forever intertwined. The tale of Atalanta and Hippomenes would live on in the hearts of those who knew their story, a reminder that love, even when touched by the hands of fate, could never truly be destroyed. It could be altered, shaped, and challenged, but it could not be broken. And so, the eternal bond of Atalanta and Hippomenes remained, a testament to the strength of love, even in the face of tragedy. Atalanta's story, though marked by her trials and the heavy hand of the gods, is far from one of defeat. Her life, though forever altered by the curse that bound her to Hippomenes, remains a legend, one that has lived on through the ages, whispered by the winds of Arcadia, carried through the songs of the bards, and etched into the hearts of all who have heard it. Even in her final transformation, she was not without purpose. The legacy of Atalanta, the untamed huntress, the fierce warrior, the woman who defied the conventions of the world, has endured in ways that far transcend the confines of her mortal existence. As the lions roamed the earth together, their bond unbroken, Atalanta and Hippomenes became a symbol, an eternal testament to the power of love, the strength of will, and the enduring force of nature. Their tale, though tragic, is also one of triumph. For though they were no longer the humans they once were, they still carried the essence of what made them legendary. They were not simply animals, they were spirits, unyielding and forever bound to one another, a living reminder of what it means to be truly free. In the ages that followed, the story of Atalanta and Hippomenes spread far beyond the forests of Arcadia. Their tale became one of those rare myths that transcended time and place, a story told by travelers, passed down by parents to their children, and recounted in the courts of kings. Atalanta, though lost to the world of men, was remembered as a woman who defied the very expectations of her time, a woman whose strength, courage, and independence were unparalleled. Her legacy was not just that of a huntress, but of a symbol of freedom, of the refusal to be shaped by forces outside of one's control. The gods, though they had punished Atalanta and Hippomenes with their curse, could not erase the truth of their love. They could bind their bodies, transform them into lions, and imprison them in the eternal cycles of nature. But they could not take away the essence of what made them who they were. Atalanta, in all her wildness, had lived a life that was true to herself, uncompromising, unyielding, and free. Even in her transformation, she remained a force of nature, a part of the earth that would never be silenced. In the centuries that passed, the story of Atalanta became a beacon of strength for those who found themselves oppressed by the weight of society's expectations. Women and men alike, who felt constrained by the roles set for them by the world, looked to Atalanta as an example. Her life reminded them that it was possible to break free, to forge one's own path, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. Her story became a rallying cry for those who longed for freedom, for those who sought to live on their own terms, and for those who dared to challenge the norms that bound them. Atalanta's legacy also extended to the realms of adventure and exploration. She was a symbol not just of strength, but of the pursuit of one's own destiny. Her life, though shaped by conflict and loss, was a journey of self-discovery, a journey that took her from the wilds of Arcadia to the world of men, from the competition of the race for her hand to the challenge of facing the gods themselves. Through it all, Atalanta never lost sight of who she was. She remained true to herself, even when the world around her sought to shape her into something she was not. And so, as the lions roamed the earth, their bond eternal, the legend of Atalanta and Hippomenes lived on. Their love, though bound by a tragic curse, became a symbol of the enduring power of connection, of the strength that can be found in love, in unity, and in the shared will to face the challenges of life together. Their story, though shrouded in sorrow, was ultimately one of victory, for they had lived their lives on their own terms, defying the forces of fate that sought to control them. As the years turned into centuries, Atalanta's name became synonymous with freedom, strength, and love. Her legend endured, not because of her victories or her defeats, but because of the unwavering spirit that she embodied, the spirit of a woman who had once been abandoned, who had fought for her place in the world, and who had, in the end, become a symbol of what it means to be truly free. Atalanta may have been transformed, but her spirit, her essence, remained forever untamed, forever wild, and forever immortal. Her story, like the wind through the trees, will never fade. It will continue to whisper through the ages, inspiring those who seek freedom, those who challenge the expectations placed upon them, and those who dare to live a life that is true to themselves. Atalanta's life had been one marked by strength, love, and the relentless pursuit of freedom. But even she could not escape the vast web of fate that stretched across the realms of the gods. Her connection to the natural world, to the wilds that had shaped her, was unshakable. Yet, as time passed and her legend grew, she became a symbol not just of physical prowess, but of the eternal forces that shaped both mortal and divine lives. As Atalanta and Hippomenes roamed the earth in their new forms, the gods continued to watch them, their eyes filled with both envy and admiration. In this moment of eternal wandering, Atalanta's legacy intertwined with the deep, often mysterious powers of the gods. Among these divine forces, none were more powerful nor more untouchable than Poseidon, the mighty god of the sea, who ruled the oceans and all that was hidden beneath them. He, too, had his role in the fates of men and gods. Though Atalanta was far from the world of the gods by this point, the influence of Poseidon and the endless depths of his power rippled across the realms. It was said that Poseidon was the brother of Zeus and Hades, and together they had divided the universe after the defeat of the Titans. Poseidon had claimed the seas, Hades the underworld, and Zeus, the sky. Poseidon's realm was vast, stretching farther than any eye could see, filled with mysteries and dangers that no mortal could comprehend. The oceans, the storms, the creatures of the deep, all were within his domain. But beneath the surface, in the shadowy recesses of the ocean's depths, Poseidon's influence reached even further. There, in the underworld of the seas, Poseidon's power was both a guardian and a judge. In the deepest trenches of Poseidon's kingdom, where the light of the sun never reached, there existed a space of quiet stillness, a place where the dead came to rest. This was not the underworld of Hades, the dark realm where souls wandered in eternal torment or peace, depending on the judgments they had faced. No, this was Poseidon's underworld, a place where the souls of those who had lived and died by the sea were washed in eternal tides. It was a place of rest, but also of reflection, for those who were part of Poseidon's realm could never forget the ocean's call, even in death. Poseidon's role in this realm was as a protector and guide, a being who oversaw the passage of souls and the eternal flow of life and death. His domain extended beyond the waters themselves, influencing the cycles of birth, decay, and rebirth that shaped the fates of all creatures, whether land-dwelling or seaborne. In many ways, Poseidon was a figure both feared and revered, a god whose temper could bring storms and shipwrecks, but whose favor could grant sailors safe passage across treacherous waters. Atalanta's story was not one that directly involved Poseidon, but the great god's influence was ever present in the world she had known. As she and Hippomenes were transformed into lions, their lives and destinies intertwined with forces far greater than they could have imagined. The land and the sea were two domains that would never meet, but in the space between them, a deeper connection existed, one that transcended the boundaries of gods and mortals. As Atalanta and Hippomenes roamed the earth, their love transcending the curse of Aphrodite, Poseidon's realm continued to shape the world in ways unseen by mortals. The winds of the sea, the ebb and flow of the tides, the deep rhythms of the oceans, all were governed by the hand of Poseidon. And yet, even in the greatest power of the sea, there existed the quiet, hidden depths where the dead were laid to rest, drifting in the currents for eternity. These quiet realms, like Atalanta's journey, were bound to the eternal forces that shaped the world, a reminder that every life, whether mortal or divine, would ultimately be shaped by forces beyond their control. Though Atalanta and Hippomenes were far from the sea, they were not beyond the reach of the gods. As they wandered the earth, their transformation into lions became a symbol of the forces of nature, powers beyond their comprehension. The sea, so vast and mysterious, was as much a part of their story as the forest had been. The wind that had once guided Atalanta's runs, the tides that had shaped the world she knew, all fell under Poseidon's rule. In the same way that the ocean's depths held secrets, so too did the story of Atalanta remain shrouded in mystery, its depths only hinted at but never fully understood. Atalanta and Hippomenes had become a part of this great eternal cycle. As they travelled together in the form of lions, they were not only bound to each other, but also to the elements, the earth, the sky, and the seas. In the end, even as they faced the consequences of their defiance of the gods, they were reminders of the very forces that shaped the world, forces that could not be outrun, could not be avoided, and could not be changed. They were as eternal as the sea itself, their love forever entwined, their fate shaped by the gods who ruled the realms of the earth and the oceans. Atalanta's journey, though shaped by the land and the wilds of Arcadia, was always connected to greater forces, ones that were not seen but felt. Her life, her love, and her struggles were not just bound by the land she had known, but by the eternal forces of nature that governed both her world and the world of the gods. One such force was the mighty Poseidon, the god who ruled the oceans and all that existed beneath its surface. The sea, in all its vastness, was a symbol of Poseidon's power, and in many ways it echoed Atalanta's own journey. The sea was both a realm of beauty and danger. To those who sailed its waters, it was a place of both life and death. The tides ebbed and flowed with a rhythm that could be gentle or violent, unpredictable and constant. For sailors, the sea was both a home and a threat, capable of providing safe passage one moment and swallowing ships whole the next. Similarly, Atalanta's journey was one of contrasts: strength and vulnerability, independence and love, freedom and the inevitable pull of fate. Poseidon, as the god of the sea, embodied these contradictions. His realm was vast, stretching further than the human eye could see, filled with creatures and wonders that no mortal could fully comprehend. The sea, like Poseidon, was both a source of life and a force of destruction. Its currents carried ships across the world, but they could also pull them under. Atalanta, too, had experienced the unpredictability of life. She had been abandoned by her father, raised by a she-bear, and had become a symbol of strength in the face of the unknown. Her strength, like the sea, was a force to be reckoned with, but it was also shaped by the world around her, by the forces of fate and the divine. Even in her transformation, Atalanta's bond to the natural world remained unbroken. As a lion, she could no longer run through the forests or the fields, but the earth, the land, and the sea were all still part of her. The sea, in particular, had a deep connection to Atalanta's story. The mythic forces that had shaped her life were not simply part of the world around her. They were woven into her very being. Her wildness, her untamed spirit, was a reflection of the power that Poseidon held over the oceans, the same power that governed the rhythms of nature, the rise and fall of tides, and the endless movement of the waters. As Atalanta and Hippomenes wandered the earth in their new forms, their bond remained, but they were now creatures of a different world, one where the forces of nature, both seen and unseen, were the true rulers. Their love, while unbroken, was no longer just their own. It was part of something much larger, something that stretched across the earth and into the very heart of the sea. They were no longer just two mortals, but a symbol of the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth that the sea itself embodied. The sea, in all its vastness, mirrored Atalanta's own journey. Just as the ocean could swallow entire ships, it could also carry them to distant lands. It was a realm of constant change, yet it remained ever constant in its power. The sea's endless rhythm, its tides and currents, were as much a part of the world as the land itself, and in the same way, Atalanta's strength and independence were inseparable from the world she had known. The wilds had shaped her, but the sea, too, was a part of her, a reminder that even the strongest forces were shaped by the world they inhabited. Atalanta's story, though marked by conflict and transformation, was also one of continuity. The bond between her and Hippomenes, though altered by the curse, remained as constant as the sea itself. love they shared, though untraditional, was timeless, enduring through the trials they faced. It was a love that could not be defined by the roles that society placed upon them, just as the sea could not be defined by the boundaries set by mortals. The sea, like Atalanta, was both a symbol of freedom and a reminder of the forces that could never be controlled. Poseidon, in his vast and untamed power, represented the forces that shaped Atalanta's world. His realm, like her journey, was unpredictable and eternal, a reminder that life itself was subject to the rhythms of the earth. The sea, with its constant ebb and flow, was a symbol of the larger forces that guided Atalanta's fate. Her strength, her spirit, and her love were all part of this eternal cycle, just as the tides of the sea would always return, no matter how many times they were disturbed. In the end, Atalanta's story was not just one of love and strength. It was a reflection of the larger, unchanging forces of nature that shaped the world. She had faced the trials of life with the courage of a lion, and in doing so, she had become a part of the timeless rhythm of the earth. Her journey, though marked by pain and sacrifice, was also one of transformation. She had become a symbol of the forces that governed the world, just as the sea, in all its power and mystery, would forever be a symbol of Poseidon's reign over the oceans and the depths. Atalanta's story, though deeply rooted in her personal journey, intersects with the larger forces of the Greek gods, whose whims and powers shaped the fates of mortals. Among these gods, Poseidon stood as one of the most powerful and unpredictable. The mighty god of the sea, earthquakes and horses, Poseidon's influence stretched far beyond the oceans. His was a domain that could calm the waves and send storms to destroy entire fleets. But beneath the surface of his power, Poseidon's role in Greek mythology was also one of balance, representing both creation and destruction. For Atalanta, Poseidon's presence was not as direct as the other gods she encountered, but his domain, the waters, the land, and the forces of nature, shaped the world she knew. Her very strength and independence echoed the untamed and unpredictable nature of Poseidon's realm. Just as the sea could bring life, it could also destroy. Similarly, Atalanta's story was one of contrasts. Her fierce independence, her unyielding spirit, and the love she shared with Hippomenes were as much a part of her as the curses and trials she faced. Poseidon's role as the god of the sea was well known in the Greek pantheon. As one of the Olympian gods, he was given dominion over the waters, a realm as vast and mysterious as the heavens themselves. His power over the ocean made him a god of great importance. Sailors and fishermen prayed to him for safe passage, and the threat of Poseidon's wrath could send entire ships to the bottom of the sea. The tides of the ocean, the unpredictable storms, and the very creatures of the deep, all were part of Poseidon's control. Yet Poseidon's influence extended beyond the sea itself. He was also the god of earthquakes, whose trident could shake the very foundations of the earth. The trembling ground, the violent shifting of the landscape were all reminders of Poseidon's reach. But it was not only destruction that Poseidon embodied. His connection to horses was another facet of his power. Horses, like the sea itself, were creatures of wild beauty and strength. Poseidon had created the first horse from the foam of the ocean, a creature as untamed and magnificent as the god who had brought it into being. For Atalanta, the connection between Poseidon's domain and her own story was not one of direct interaction, but rather one of symbolic resonance. Her connection to the wild, to the untamed forces of nature mirrored the uncontrollable power of Poseidon's realm. Just as Poseidon could shape the seas and cause the earth to tremble, Atalanta, too, was a force that could not be tamed. Her life had been shaped by the wilderness, by her strength, and by her refusal to conform to the roles that society had set for her. In this way, Poseidon's role in Greek mythology reflected Atalanta's journey, one of both power and isolation, of freedom and the price that comes with it. Poseidon was a god who was not easily defined by simple qualities of good or evil. He was a god of extremes, embodying both creation and destruction. The same god who could calm the seas and offer safe passage to sailors could also send storms that sank ships and drowned entire cities. Poseidon's temperament, much like the sea itself, was volatile. His moods could shift from calm to fury, from peace to destruction, depending on how he was treated or what pleased him. In a way, Atalanta's journey echoed this duality. She too was a force of nature, both fierce and tender, strong and vulnerable. She had been raised by the wilds, taught by the forest and the creatures within it to be self-reliant, powerful, and free. But just as Poseidon's control over the seas could not be ignored, Atalanta's strength was something that could not be denied. Her power was a part of her, as natural as the earth beneath her feet. Yet, just as the sea could be both nurturing and destructive, Atalanta's independence came with its own sacrifices. Poseidon's role in Greek mythology was also tied to the larger cosmic balance. As one of the Olympian gods, his domain and actions were essential to maintaining order in the world. The sea was a vital source of life, providing food, transportation, and resources to the people of Greece. Poseidon's blessings ensured that the seas remained navigable and that the creatures of the deep thrived. But much like the unpredictable forces of nature, Poseidon's power was not one to be taken lightly. The gods of the Greek pantheon were not simply beings of good fortune. They were also forces that demanded respect, for their power could bring both fortune and calamity. In Atalanta's world, where freedom and strength were her guiding principles, Poseidon's mythology served as a reminder of the larger forces at play. Her life was marked by personal trials, by the constant struggle to define herself outside the expectations of others. In this sense, Poseidon's mythology paralleled her own. He, too, was a figure whose strength and will could not be controlled, whose power shaped the world around him. Atalanta, like Poseidon, was both a symbol of strength and a reminder of the consequences of such power. Atalanta's story was one of resistance, of breaking free from the confines of traditional expectations. Her defiance of societal norms, her refusal to be tamed or controlled, mirrored Poseidon's own resistance to being constrained by the will of the other gods. Like the sea, Atalanta's spirit was wild and free, and her legacy, much like the great god of the oceans, would endure through the ages. In the end, Atalanta's journey was not just about the love she shared with Hippomenes or the races she won. It was about her place in the larger eternal cycle of the natural world, a cycle that included the gods and their influence over life, death, and fate. And like Poseidon, Atalanta would forever remain a part of that cycle, a symbol of the untamed, unyielding forces of nature, a reminder that even in the face of divine intervention, the power of an individual spirit could never be fully extinguished. Atalanta's life had been a series of extraordinary moments where her strength and independence had shaped the path she walked, moments when she defied expectations, challenged traditions, and stood firm in her beliefs. And yet, just as Poseidon's power could transform the ocean from calm to storm, so too could the circumstances of her life shift with the forces beyond her control. Atalanta, despite her might, was not immune to the capricious whims of the gods, and her fate was entwined not just with her own actions, but with the divine will that had shaped the world for eternity. Poseidon's wrath, like the sea itself, was a force to be reckoned with. His moods, as unpredictable as the waves, were capable of sweeping away everything in their path. Yet, just as quickly, he could calm the seas and restore balance. In many ways, Poseidon's temper was a reflection of the world Atalanta had known, a world of contrasts, of wild beauty and uncontrollable forces. As Atalanta's life had proven time and again, strength could be both a blessing and a burden, freedom both exhilarating and dangerous. For Atalanta, Poseidon's wrath was not something she directly provoked, but it was a force that she could not escape. She had been, after all, a creature of the wild, untamed, unyielding. The very qualities that made her formidable were the same qualities that caught the attention of the gods. And though Atalanta's love for Hippomenes was unbreakable, her fate, like the sea, was not something that could always be controlled. When the gods looked upon Atalanta and Hippomenes, they saw not just two mortals who had defied the odds and created a love that transcended expectations, but two beings who had risen above the boundaries of the world they inhabited. And while such acts of defiance were often celebrated by mortals, they were not always looked upon favorably by the gods. In their eyes, mortals were not meant to surpass the gods' domain. They were not meant to live without the gods' intervention. Their love, though beautiful, was also a challenge to the natural order, a reminder that even the gods' greatest creations could be tested. It was then that Poseidon, with his tempestuous nature, turned his gaze upon them. His wrath, though swift, was not malicious in its intent. It was a reminder, as Poseidon's wrath always was, of the power that lay in the forces of nature, forces that were beyond mortal comprehension. His anger came like a storm crashing upon the shore, destructive but cleansing, fierce but fleeting. Atalanta and Hippomenes, transformed by the gods and bound together by a love that was eternal, found themselves caught in the eye of Poseidon's storm. In a moment of divine intervention, they were turned into lions, creatures of strength and grace, symbols of both power and vulnerability. Poseidon's wrath had forever altered their fate, but in the aftermath there was calm. The storm, as fierce as it had been, passed, leaving behind a quiet understanding. Even in the face of divine intervention, their love had remained unbroken. As lions, Atalanta and Hippomenes no longer faced the mortal struggles that had once defined their lives. They no longer had to race or hunt for survival, no longer had to prove their strength in the ways they had in the past. Their love, though now eternal, had come with its own price. But the calm that followed Poseidon's storm was a reminder of the quiet strength that they both carried within them. In their new forms, they had become symbols of the powerful forces of nature, forces that could both destroy and create, forces that could change the course of history and then retreat back into the depths from which they had come. As the years passed, Atalanta and Hippomenes roamed the earth, their eternal love a reminder of the fragile balance between power and humility. The world that had once seemed so vast, so full of challenges and victories, had now become their home in a different way. They were no longer bound by the constraints of time and mortality. They were part of something greater, an eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth. And though they could never return to the human world they had known, their love remained a symbol of what it meant to defy fate, to challenge the gods, and to endure. In the quiet aftermath of Poseidon's wrath, Atalanta and Hippomenes found peace in the understanding that their love had transcended all that they had once known. The storm had come and gone, and in its wake they were left to walk together, side by side, through an eternal journey. It was not the journey they had once imagined, but it was one they would face together, as lions bound by a love that could not be torn apart. And so, as the ocean waves continued to ebb and flow, so too did the love of Atalanta and Hippomenes, constant, unyielding, and eternal. Poseidon's wrath, though fierce, had been but a moment in the grand, eternal cycle of their lives. And in the calm that followed, they had found a new rhythm, one that would carry them through the ages, as symbols of love and power, of strength and endurance. As time passed and the world around them changed, Atalanta and Hippomenes, transformed into lions, continued their journey through an existence that was both eternal and endless. In their new forms, they were no longer bound by the fleeting passage of years. Their lives, though marked by love and loss, were now woven into the very fabric of the earth, tied to the forces that governed the world and beyond. The transformation granted them immortality, but it also bound them to the earth in ways they had never anticipated. No longer could they run free through the forests of Arcadia, their former home. No longer could they roam the lands as they had once done, untouched, unbroken. The winds of the wild no longer whispered their names. The ancient trees under which they had once found solace were now distant, unreachable. Yet, even in this transformed state, there was a sense of freedom, a freedom that came not from the physical world, but from their bond. Atalanta and Hippomenes, now bound to each other for eternity, found themselves travelling together across the lands, forever linked by the curse that had transformed them. The lions roamed in unison, their steps synchronized, their movements graceful and purposeful. Though their lives were bound by the gods, they were still a part of the natural world they had once known. The rhythm of their journey mirrored the eternal cycle of nature, the changing seasons, the rise and fall of the sun, the ebb and flow of the tides, and the endless dance of the stars above. For Atalanta, this eternity was both a blessing and a burden. Her heart, wild and untamed, had always been shaped by the rhythms of nature, by the unpredictable forces that governed the world. She had once been a woman who sought the freedom of the open land, a woman who ran without limit, whose heart beat in time with the earth. But now, as a lion, her movements were dictated by a force larger than herself, a force that she could neither control nor escape. Yet, even in this state, there was peace. Atalanta and Hippomenes were together, bound by a love that had defied the very gods. No matter the challenges they faced, no matter the changes they endured, their connection remained unbroken. The lions they had become were a reflection of their strength and resilience, their unwavering bond to one another. Together, they were a symbol of love that could not be destroyed, a love that transcended the limitations of time and space. Their journey, though eternal, was not without its moments of reflection. At times, as they roamed the earth, They would pause in the stillness of the night, gazing up at the stars. The night sky, with its endless expanse, became a reminder of the vastness of the world and the forces that shaped it. They could not return to their mortal lives, but they could still find meaning in the world they now inhabited. The stars above them, as distant and unreachable as they were, held a sense of comfort. They were a constant, a reminder that even in the face of change, some things remained the same. Atalanta and Hippomenes had once lived lives of adventure, of glory and challenge. But now, the journey was different. It was no longer about the race or the hunt, the triumph or the victory. It was about living in harmony with the world around them, finding solace in each other's company, and embracing the eternity that had been granted to them. In their eternal journey, they had become a part of the earth, their lives intertwined with the rhythm of nature itself. Over time, their story became one of legend. It was told by those who had heard whispers of the lions that roamed the earth, two creatures bound together by love and fate. The tale of Atalanta and Hippomenes spread across the lands, carried by travelers and storytellers, immortalized in song and in story. Though they were no longer present in the world of mortals, their love lived on, a symbol of the power of connection and the enduring nature of the heart. The lions, though they roamed the earth, were also part of the cosmic cycle, their lives a reflection of the natural order of the world. They were part of the ebb and flow of life and death, of the rise and fall of the sun and the moon. In the grand scheme of the universe, their story was but one small chapter, but it was a chapter that would continue to echo through the ages, a reminder that love, even in the face of the gods, could never be fully extinguished. Atalanta and Hippomenes had faced the challenges of fate, defied the will of the gods, and found each other in a world that sought to separate them. Their love, though born of defiance, had become something greater, something eternal. The lions that they had become were a symbol of their bond, a bond that had never faltered, even in the face of the gods' wrath. Their journey was not one of triumph or defeat, but one of unity, two souls bound together for all eternity, facing the world as one. As the lions roamed, their hearts beat in time with the earth, their spirits forever entwined. The eternal cycle of nature, the endless dance of the seasons, would continue, but the love of Atalanta and Hippomenes would remain, unchanged, unbroken, and everlasting. Atalanta's story, though marked by the weight of God's wills and tragic transformations, continued to resonate through the ages, not merely as a tale of one woman's struggle against fate, but as a reflection of the eternal human spirit. The lions that Atalanta and Hippomenes had become were not just creatures roaming the earth. They were living symbols of endurance, strength, and love. Their story continued to inspire those who came after them, reminding all who heard it that true power is not in defying the gods, but in embracing the journey, no matter the cost. As the centuries passed, the tale of Atalanta spread far beyond the borders of Arcadia. It travelled across kingdoms, across seas, and was carried by those who sought to understand what it meant to be both human and divine. Atalanta, the huntress who had been abandoned at birth, the woman who had faced gods and monsters alike, had become a symbol of the possibility of overcoming the greatest obstacles. Her legacy was not defined by the obstacles themselves, but by how she had faced them, fearlessly, relentlessly, and with the strength of nature itself. In the lands where her legend took root, There were those who would whisper her name in the winds, calling upon her strength and courage when they needed it most. Her name was spoken in awe, and her tale became one of the most enduring in Greek mythology. Atalanta was not just a figure from the past, but an eternal archetype, a representation of the fierce warrior spirit that could rise above any challenge. Her life was a reminder to all that freedom and strength could not be bound by the limitations of mortal existence. Atalanta's transformation into a lion, bound for eternity with Hippomenes, may have seemed like the end of her personal journey. But in reality, it was the beginning of her greatest legacy. As a lion, her essence lived on, not in a realm of immortality alone, but as a force of nature that could not be constrained by time or mortality. The very earth upon which she had once walked had become her eternal home. Her love for Hippomenes had grown into something more profound than it ever could have been in her mortal life. Their transformation had not stripped them of their connection to the world they had once known. It had only deepened it, cementing their place as part of the eternal natural order. In time, the lions of Atalanta and Hippomenes became a symbol of harmony between nature's raw power and the quiet strength of love. Their bond, unbroken by the passage of time or divine intervention, served as a reminder that love, when pure and unyielding, could transcend even the will of the gods. The couple's fate, though tragic in some senses, had also become a lesson to those who heard their story. That to truly live is to embrace the journey in all its forms, even when it leads to the most unexpected destinations. The earth, much like the gods, had its own way of preserving the legends of those who had left their mark. The wild animals that roamed the land carried pieces of Atalanta's spirit with them. Every race, every chase was a reminder of the untamed huntress who had once run through the forests of Arcadia. The trees, the winds, and the rivers whispered her name, carrying her legacy to all who would listen. Her story, though born of mortal struggle, had become as eternal as the very world that had shaped her. In every corner of the world, there were those who found themselves in a struggle, whether against the forces of fate, the expectations of others, or the limits placed upon them by society. And in those moments, they could look to Atalanta as a guide, a shining example of what it meant to rise above, to defy the odds, and to forge a path of one's own choosing. Her legacy was not just one of survival, but of thriving in the face of adversity, of living a life true to one's essence, no matter the cost. Her transformation into a lion bound to Hippomenes for eternity was not a punishment. It was a reflection of the timeless bond they shared, one that would never be severed by the passage of time. Though the gods had played their hand, Atalanta's spirit remained as fierce and wild as ever. She was not just a woman of the wilds, she had become the wild itself. Her journey had come full circle, and in that eternal moment of being, Atalanta was more than just a legend. She was a force of nature, an enduring reminder that even in the face of the gods, true strength is not in submission, but in embracing the power within. As the lions roamed together across the earth, they were not lost to time. They were immortalized in the hearts of those who came after them. Their love an enduring symbol of the harmony between the natural world and the hearts of those who dare to live without limits. The name of Atalanta lived on, carried by the wind, whispered through the trees, and written in the stories passed down from generation to generation. And so, the eternal cycle continued. Atalanta's legacy, like the forest she had once known, would never cease. Her story would continue to echo, as boundless and timeless as the earth itself. Atalanta's legacy, as unyielding as the winds that once guided her, continued to reverberate through the ages. Her name was whispered by those who sought freedom, those who defied the rules that sought to define them. But as her tale intertwined with that of the gods, particularly Poseidon, it became a part of a greater narrative, the story of Greek civilization itself. Poseidon's domain, the oceans, the tides, and the unseen depths, not only shaped the natural world, but also influenced the development of Greek culture and its people. The sea, with its vast expanse, became the very fabric of Greek life, from commerce to mythology, from art to politics. Poseidon's influence on Greek civilization was profound. As the god of the sea, he held sway over both the waters and the shores, shaping the very geography of the Greek world. The Greeks, a people whose lives were tied to the sea, looked to Poseidon as both protector and guide. Without the sea, Greek civilization, as it was known, could never have flourished. It was the sea that provided their routes of trade. It was the sea that brought their ships to distant lands, and it was the sea that connected them to the gods themselves. Much like Atalanta, who had been shaped by the wilds of Arcadia, the Greeks were shaped by the unpredictable nature of Poseidon's realm. Their lives were as dependent on the sea's moods as their myths were steeped in the power of Poseidon. The ancient Greeks believed that Poseidon's moods could dictate the fate of their ships, the safety of their sailors, and the prosperity of their trade. It was to Poseidon that they turned when they sought safe passage, offering prayers before setting sail. The sea, with its vast and mysterious depth, was both a symbol of wealth and danger, a force that could bring prosperity, but also wipe away entire fleets with a single storm. Poseidon's role in Greek mythology reflected this duality. He was not just the god of calm seas, but the god of destruction as well. Just as the Greeks feared Poseidon's wrath, they revered his power. In their mythology, Poseidon's temper was as legendary as his gifts. He could summon violent storms that sank ships and swallowed whole fleets, but he could also calm the waves, offering safe passage to those who called upon him. In this way, Poseidon was both a protector and a destroyer, a force that shaped Greek civilization in ways both seen and unseen. Atalanta, though distant from the realm of Poseidon's sea, embodied this duality in her own way. Her life had been a reflection of the wildness that Poseidon controlled. Raised by a she-bear, independent and untamed, Atalanta's journey mirrored the unpredictability of Poseidon's domain. She was a figure of both strength and vulnerability, much like the sea itself, untamable but ever-changing. Her connection to the natural world, the forest, the animals, and the wilds of Arcadia was an extension of Poseidon's influence on the earth. Though she was not a sailor, Atalanta's spirit resonated with the same wild, uncontrollable forces that Poseidon wielded. The sea, with its vastness, offered both freedom and danger, just as Atalanta's journey had. She sought freedom from the constraints of society, refusing to be defined by the roles set for her as a woman. Yet, in the same way that Poseidon could control the seas, there were forces beyond her control: fate, the gods, and the unrelenting march of time. Though she could outrun the men who sought her hand in marriage, she could not escape the divine forces that shaped her destiny. Just as the sea could be calm one moment and violent the next, Atalanta's life was a series of unpredictable events that tested her strength and will. In the broader context of Greek civilization, Poseidon's influence extended far beyond the mythology. The sea was essential to Greek trade and communication. It was the Greeks' connection to the wider world, allowing them to establish colonies, engage in trade, and spread their culture. Without Poseidon's control over the sea, the Greeks would not have been able to thrive as they did. The gods, though distant, were directly tied to the success of the civilization, their power shaping every aspect of Greek life. Poseidon's favor was sought in matters of trade, war, and exploration, just as Atalanta's strength and courage were sought in matters of survival and battle. Atalanta's story, though shaped by divine forces, was ultimately a reflection of the mortal world's struggle to live in harmony with those forces. Poseidon's realm, the vast and ever-changing sea, was a reminder that life was both fragile and powerful, unpredictable and constant. In her defiance of tradition, in her victory in the race for her hand, and in her eventual transformation, Atalanta became a symbol of what it meant to live in the face of overwhelming odds. Her journey, like Poseidon's sea, was not one of simple triumph, but of constant challenge, constant change, and constant resilience. In the end, Atalanta's legacy became intertwined with the very forces that governed the world she had once known. The sea, with its depths and its storms, was a symbol of the divine powers that shaped both the world and the gods themselves. Atalanta, though bound to her fate by the gods, remained a reflection of the wild, untamable nature that Poseidon ruled. She became a part of the eternal cycle of life and death, of creation and destruction, just as the sea itself is part of the eternal rhythm of the earth. Her story, a story of defiance, love, and transformation, would continue to be told for generations to come, just as the tides of the sea continue to shape the shores. And in that timeless rhythm, Atalanta's name would live on, as enduring as Poseidon's reign over the oceans. Atalanta's story was not merely one of divine intervention, love, and transformation. It was also a reflection of the enduring power of the individual's spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. Throughout her life, she had defied expectations, challenging the gods, winning races, and hunting creatures that even the most skilled men could not defeat. But as time wore on, her legacy became less about the challenges she had faced and more about what she had left behind. A symbol of defiance, strength, and the pursuit of freedom that transcended even the divine forces that had shaped her. In the distant corners of the Greek world, Atalanta's name became synonymous with independence. She was not just a figure of myth, but an archetype, a model for those who sought to rise above the limitations placed upon them by society. Her defiance of traditional gender roles, her refusal to be bound by the expectations of marriage and motherhood, spoke to a deeper longing within the human spirit, a longing for freedom and self-determination. Atalanta's story was retold by generations of storytellers, and with each retelling, her legacy grew. Her life became a rallying cry for those who sought to break free from the conventions of their time, a testament to the power of an individual who could stand tall against the might of the gods themselves. Her legacy was not about triumph over enemies or divine battles won, but about the courage to live life on one's own terms, to chase one's own destiny, and to find strength in the face of adversity. But Atalanta's story was also one of balance. In her quest for freedom and independence, she had, in many ways, distanced herself from the world of men. She had been raised by a she-bear, had lived in the wilds of Arcadia, and had carved out a life for herself that was untethered from the expectations of society. Yet, despite this independence, she had found love in Hippomenes, and in him she had found a partner who understood the struggle of living in a world defined by forces greater than oneself. This tension between independence and love, between freedom and connection, was at the heart of Atalanta's legacy. She had never been a woman to be controlled by the world around her, but she had also never been a woman to shy away from love. Her relationship with Hippomenes had shown that even the most independent of spirits could find strength in connection. That love was not something that bound, but something that elevated. And in this way, Atalanta's story offered an important lesson for those who followed. It was possible to remain true to oneself, to retain one's power and independence, even in the face of love and connection. Her love for Hippomenes had not diminished her, nor had it tamed her. It had, instead, transformed her, just as her journey with the gods had. The wildness that had defined her life was not something to be subdued, but something to be embraced, even in the most human of experiences. The bond that Atalanta and Hippomenes shared, though marked by divine curses, had endured, and their legacy as partners was an extension of the journey they had taken together. As lions, bound for eternity, their love remained unbroken, and their story became a symbol not just of strength and courage, but of the quiet, unyielding power of love and connection in the face of fate's cruel hand. In many ways, Atalanta's story came to represent a powerful metaphor for the human condition, one that transcended the boundaries of myth and reality. Her struggle against the gods was not just a literal battle against divine forces, but a reflection of the eternal human battle against forces beyond our control. Atalanta had faced the gods, had lived in the wilds, had run races and hunted monsters. She had lived life on her own terms, yet in the end she had not escaped fate. Instead, she had embraced it, finding her place in the world not through defiance alone, but through acceptance, balance, and connection. Atalanta's legacy was thus not just one of defiance, but of resilience. She had been shaped by the world around her, but she had never allowed it to define her. Instead, she had taken the forces of nature, the challenges of the gods, and the love she shared with Hippomenes, and had woven them into her own narrative. Her strength, though unmatched by others, was not just physical. It was the strength to face the unknown, to embrace both freedom and connection, to remain true to oneself even in the face of the gods. And so, the huntress of Arcadia, who had once outrun men, had become a symbol not just of physical prowess, but of the endurance of the spirit. Her name was remembered not as a footnote in the pages of mythology, but as a beacon for those who sought to break free, to forge their own paths, and to find their place in the world. Atalanta's legacy lived on in the hearts of those who saw in her story a reflection of their own struggles. Struggles for freedom, for love, and for the courage to live authentically in a world that so often sought to define them. Her life had been shaped by the gods, by love, by loss, and by transformation. But in the end, it was her indomitable spirit that remained, forever wild, forever free, and forever remembered. The tale of Atalanta, the fierce huntress, continues to resonate throughout the world of Greek mythology, not only because of her personal triumphs and her connection with the gods, but also because of the influence she had on those who came after her. As one of the few women to stand as a true equal to the heroes of ancient Greece, Atalanta's story was a beacon for generations of warriors, both men and women, who sought to carve their own legacies in a world often ruled by the expectations of others. Her strength, independence, and unparalleled skill in the hunt made her a living example of what it meant to defy tradition. Atalanta did not allow the constraints of her gender to dictate her fate. While many women of her time were relegated to domestic roles, Atalanta ran freely in the forests of Arcadia, proving that the path to greatness was not reserved solely for men. Her story became a symbol of the possibility that women could also wield power, hunt wild beasts, and challenge the gods. Atalanta's influence on the Greek heroes of myth is particularly evident in the heroes she encountered, those who were changed by her presence, either as allies, competitors, or as rivals. Her participation in the Caledonian boar hunt, a grand event that gathered the greatest heroes of the time, left an indelible mark on the male warriors who witnessed her prowess. It was here that Atalanta, though a woman, was not simply a participant, but a key player in the hunt. Her spear struck the boar and marked her as one of the greatest heroes of the age. The respect she earned from these legendary figures showed that, though women's roles were traditionally defined in ancient Greece, strength and courage were universal traits, not limited by gender. Meleager, the leader of the hunt and one of the most prominent heroes, formed a special bond with Atalanta. He admired her skill and bravery, and it was through their shared participation in the boar hunt that their friendship grew. Meleager's respect for Atalanta was a testament to her exceptional abilities, as he was known not only for his strength, but also for his wisdom. The respect he showed her as a woman who defied conventional roles speaks volumes about the way Atalanta challenged the perceptions of what a hero should be. In the same way, Atalanta's influence extended beyond her direct interactions. Her very existence and her actions gave rise to a shift in the way that heroes were perceived. No longer was a hero defined solely by their physical strength or their ability to fight. Atalanta showed that intelligence, bravery, and independence were equally valuable. This redefining of heroism set the stage for future generations of heroes, men and women alike, who would look to Atalanta as a model for what was possible. Atalanta's influence is also seen in her encounters with other mythic figures. In the myth of the Argonauts, for example, she was invited to join the legendary band of heroes on their quest for the Golden Fleece. While her participation in the Argonauts' journey is often sidelined in comparison to the tales of her male counterparts, the mere inclusion of Atalanta in such a prestigious group illustrates the respect she commanded in the mythic world. Her place among the Argonauts signaled that women too could partake in great quests and legendary adventures, that they could be the equals of any hero, regardless of the task. Atalanta's race for her hand in marriage further cemented her legacy as a trailblazer in Greek mythology. Her challenge, which stipulated that any man who could outrun her would win her hand, broke from tradition in a way that had never been seen before. The race itself was a powerful statement. Atalanta was not simply a prize to be won, but an equal partner who would decide her fate. Her challenge reshaped the role of women in Greek myth, showcasing that a woman's worth was not based on her beauty or the approval of men, but on her strength, her will, and her ability to make her own choices. While Hippomenes ultimately won her hand, Atalanta's role in the race demonstrated the power of choice, autonomy, and self-determination. She had the courage to take control of her own destiny, a rare feat in a world where women were often expected to submit to the will of their male counterparts. In this way, her story became a model for others who sought to navigate a world that was not always kind to those who defied its expectations. Atalanta's influence also extended into the realms of heroism and the gods. Her actions were observed by the gods, and though she faced the wrath of Aphrodite, the goddess's intervention in Atalanta's fate was not an attempt to subdue her spirit, but rather an acknowledgement of Atalanta's strength and her challenge to the divine order. Atalanta, like the gods themselves, had power. Power to control her own destiny, power to defy the odds, and power to leave a mark on the world. In the end, her transformation into a lion with Hippomenes was a divine recognition of the power she had earned. It was not punishment, but a symbol of her place among the great heroes of myth. Atalanta's legacy influenced generations of Greek heroes, both men and women, who looked to her as an example of what was possible. In her, they saw not just a huntress, but a force of nature, an embodiment of courage, independence, and the will to chart one's own course. The myths that followed would continue to build on the foundation she had set, expanding the possibilities for what heroes could be and what they could accomplish. Her influence can still be seen today in the stories of those who challenge the status quo, those who dare to live their own lives on their own terms. Atalanta's story has become one not just of myth, but of empowerment, reminding us that the greatest heroes are often those who dare to step outside the boundaries set by the world around them. Even in the centuries following Atalanta's transformation into a lion, her influence continued to echo through the corridors of history. Atalanta's life story, though bound by the divine whims of the gods, transcended the confines of mythology and became an enduring symbol of strength, defiance, and individuality. Her tale continued to inspire those who sought to break free from the limitations placed upon them by society, those who wished to live lives true to their essence, and those who sought to challenge the boundaries of their world. Though Atalanta had been transformed into a lion, her place in Greek mythology was never diminished. Rather, she had become an eternal symbol, woven into the fabric of ancient Greek culture. Her name was invoked by those who believed that strength lay in independence, and her legend became a guide for those who sought to understand what it meant to live a life free from constraint. Atalanta's reverence continued long after the time of the ancient Greeks. Scholars, poets, and artists alike continued to turn to her story, seeking to explore its deeper meanings. For centuries, her tale was reimagined and retold, each retelling adding a new layer to her legacy. Whether in the form of art, poetry, or theatre, Atalanta became a central figure for exploring the complexities of identity, power, and destiny. Her influence reached beyond the borders of Greece, crossing into the realms of Rome and later the broader Western world. In the Roman era, Atalanta's legend continued to captivate the imaginations of those who heard it. Her story was frequently referenced in Roman literature, where she was seen as a heroic figure, not confined by the limitations of her gender. Roman poets such as Ovid and Virgil, who were familiar with Greek myths, would often invoke her image as a model of strength and autonomy, her deeds remaining a touchstone for exploring themes of love, independence, and the breaking of societal constraints. The legacy of Atalanta endured through these generations, evolving into an emblem of empowerment for women. In a world where women were often sidelined in stories of adventure and heroism, Atalanta stood as a shining exception. Her participation in the Caledonian boar hunt and her victory in the race for her hand demonstrated that strength and courage could be found in women as much as in men. Atalanta's refusal to be constrained by societal expectations made her a symbol for those who sought to change the narratives written for them. She embodied the idea that true heroism could come in any form, that one did not need to fit into the mold of convention to be a legend. Her story was not just one of personal triumph, but a reflection of the eternal human struggle against the forces of fate, destiny, and the expectations of the world. Atalanta's journey, the race for her hand, the hunt for the boar, her defiance of the gods, and her eventual transformation into a lion was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Her life, though shaped by divine forces, was also defined by her refusal to be ruled by them. Her autonomy and strength of character made her a timeless figure, one whose legacy would continue to inspire generations to come. As her story continued to inspire those who heard it, Atalanta also became a symbol for future generations of women who sought to write their own stories. She was no longer just a mythological figure, but a representation of the possibility that women could be heroes in their own right, that they could take control of their destinies and shape their own futures. Atalanta's journey proved that heroism was not confined to any single gender, race, or time, but was instead a universal quality that could be found in anyone willing to embrace their strength and follow their heart. In modern times, Atalanta's influence continues to be felt. Her story has been reimagined in literature, film, and art, where she remains a powerful symbol of independence and resilience. She has become a role model for women and men alike, a reminder that the journey to greatness is not always easy, but that it is one worth undertaking. Atalanta's legacy is not simply about her victories in the race or the hunt, but about her determination to live authentically, to embrace her wildness, and to never back down from a challenge. Her transformation into a lion, though a punishment imposed by the gods, also served as a powerful reminder of her true essence, a force of nature that could never be tamed, never controlled, and never fully defined. Atalanta's strength was not just in her ability to outrun men or defeat beasts, but in her ability to remain true to herself, no matter the cost. She lived her life with integrity and courage, and in the end, her legacy was not just about the challenges she faced, but about the way she faced them, with grace, strength, and an unyielding spirit. Atalanta's story will continue to be told for generations, her name forever remembered as a symbol of the enduring power of the human spirit. In a world that often seeks to limit and define, Atalanta stands as a testament to the power of living freely and authentically. Her legacy will remain, eternal as the lions she and Hippomenes became, unbroken, unyielding, and timeless. Atalanta's legacy, though rooted in the ancient myths of Greece, has transcended the boundaries of time and place, continuing to resonate in modern culture. Her story, though shaped by gods and fate, has come to symbolize much more than just the triumphs of a mythical figure. It is a reflection of the ongoing human struggle for autonomy, independence, and strength in the face of adversity. In the modern world, where people continue to challenge the constraints placed upon them by society, Atalanta's story has become a touchstone for those who seek to break free from tradition. As an iconic female figure in Greek mythology, Atalanta's defiance of the expected roles for women, both in her refusal to marry and her participation in hunts, has been an empowering example for generations of women. In a time when many stories of heroism were told from a male perspective, Atalanta's journey proved that women, too, could be warriors, adventurers, and leaders. Atalanta's race for her hand in marriage, where she declared that only a man who could outrun her would win her heart, is a particularly relevant part of her myth in modern discussions of gender equality. In a world where women's agency was often limited to domestic and familial roles, Atalanta's challenge defied these expectations. By setting her own terms for marriage, she reclaimed her agency in a society where women were often treated as property to be won, rather than equals to be chosen. Her independence and strength have made her an enduring symbol for gender equality, reminding us that true empowerment comes from the ability to define our own destinies. Atalanta's influence can be seen in various areas of modern culture. In literature, she has been reimagined as a hero who challenges the boundaries of the world around her, and many contemporary works have drawn inspiration from her bold spirit. Authors, filmmakers, and artists continue to find new ways to reframe her myth, often exploring themes of freedom, defiance, and the complexities of the human spirit. Atalanta is frequently cast as a symbol of women's liberation in stories of self-discovery, personal growth, and resistance against societal constraints. Her role in the Caledonian boar hunt, where she was one of the few heroes to participate alongside legendary figures like Meleager, continues to serve as an example of breaking boundaries. In recent retellings of the story, Atalanta is not simply a passive participant, but an active and integral figure in the success of the hunt. She is often depicted as the one whose actions lead to the boar's defeat, making it clear that her strength, skill, and perseverance were just as important as those of the men who accompanied her. This reinterpretation highlights her role as a powerful figure in her own right, one who cannot be dismissed, even by the most renowned heroes of myth. In the realm of film and television, Atalanta's legacy is also revisited. She is frequently portrayed as a complex character, one who struggles with the tension between her fierce independence and her desire for connection. This dynamic makes her a compelling figure for modern audiences who understand the struggle between asserting one's individuality and being a part of something larger. Atalanta's internal conflict, the desire for freedom versus the longing for love and companionship, resonates deeply with the modern experience, where individuals are often forced to balance their personal goals with societal pressures. Moreover, Atalanta's transformation into a lion, as a result of her relationship with Hippomenes, has also inspired modern interpretations of the human-animal connection. Atalanta's wildness was always a part of her, but her transformation solidified her place as a symbol of untamed strength, forever connected to the earth. In this form, Atalanta and Hippomenes represent an ideal of unity, not just between two people, but between human beings and nature. This idea has found its way into contemporary environmental and animal rights movements, where Atalanta's myth has been reimagined as a call for deeper connection and respect for the natural world. Even in the world of sports, Atalanta's story is often invoked as a symbol of perseverance and excellence. As a hunter and athlete, Atalanta was unmatched in her speed and strength. In today's competitive athletic world, her legacy continues to inspire female athletes who, like her, must challenge the stereotypes and limitations imposed upon them. Her race for her hand in marriage, where she set the terms and demanded equality, mirrors the struggles women face in sports and society to be seen as equals to men, to be given the same opportunities, and to be celebrated for their achievements. Atalanta's story also has a place in the ongoing dialogue about self-determination and individual agency. In a world that often pushes individuals into predefined roles, Atalanta's refusal to be confined to the expectations of society serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of living authentically. Her journey speaks to anyone who has ever faced the pressure to conform, whether due to gender, societal expectations, or family dynamics. Atalanta is a symbol of how, even in the face of obstacles, we can carve our own path and live true to our desires and beliefs. Ultimately, Atalanta's myth continues to inspire because it is one of transformation, not just of the body, but of the spirit. Her life was not defined by the roles that others tried to place on her. It was defined by her actions, her choices, and her refusal to live within the limits that others set. Her legacy reminds us that greatness does not come from following a prescribed path, but from the strength to forge our own, regardless of the circumstances. As her name endures through the centuries, Atalanta stands as an icon of freedom, courage, and the power of the individual spirit. Her myth is far from a story of mere triumph. It is a timeless reminder of the importance of living authentically and breaking free from the expectations placed upon us. She remains an enduring symbol for all who seek to live a life true to themselves, unbowed by the weight of tradition or the forces of fate. Atalanta's journey, though it began in the ancient forests of Arcadia, has transcended her mythological origins, shaping not only her legacy, but the future of mythology itself. The tale of this wild huntress, who defied gods and men alike, continues to influence the way stories are told. Atalanta's story is not just one of ancient times, but one that remains relevant in the modern world, a testament to the enduring power of myths and their ability to evolve alongside human culture. In the future of mythology, Atalanta's story represents the ongoing relevance of personal agency and strength, particularly in the context of female empowerment. While many ancient myths were shaped by the power dynamics of their time, Atalanta's character offers a striking example of how mythology can shift, embracing themes of gender equality, autonomy, and resilience. The mythology of old may have been shaped by the dominance of male heroes, but Atalanta's influence marks a new direction, one where strength and heroism are no longer defined by gender, but by the internal resolve and power of the individual. Her narrative, particularly her challenge to men to outrun her in the race for her hand in marriage, is a stark representation of the shift in how we view gender roles. In the future of mythology, stories like Atalanta's will continue to serve as a symbol of the possibility for transformation, of breaking free from the constraints of tradition and societal expectations. The idea that a woman could set her own terms for love and marriage while keeping her autonomy intact will continue to serve as a model for future generations. Atalanta's legacy also carries a significant role in the broader context of heroes. In modern mythology, the archetype of the hero has evolved beyond mere physical strength to include qualities like intelligence, resilience, and moral integrity. Atalanta was a hero who could match her male counterparts in strength and bravery, but it was her independence and her ability to challenge societal norms that set her apart. The future of mythology will continue to recognize that heroism takes many forms, not just the grand deeds of battle, but the quieter, more personal victories that shape who we are as individuals. The myth of Atalanta also leaves room for reinterpretation and reinvention. Much like the changing tides of the sea, mythology can ebb and flow, taking on new meanings as society progresses. Atalanta's journey can be reimagined through the lens of modern struggles, such as the fight for gender equality, the empowerment of women, and the importance of personal choice. Her life, though bound by divine forces, speaks to the universal human experience of navigating the pressures and constraints of the world, finding the courage to overcome them, and living authentically. In the future, Atalanta's myth may be explored in new forms, be it literature, film, or other mediums of storytelling. Her defiance, strength, and resilience can inspire narratives that explore the complexities of identity and freedom. Modern storytellers have the opportunity to reinterpret Atalanta's myth, perhaps focusing on her inner battles and how her strength was not just physical, but mental and emotional. These reimaginings will allow her story to resonate with new generations who are faced with challenges similar to those Atalanta faced, pressures from society, from family, and from the expectations of the world around them. In literature and cinema, Atalanta's role as a warrior, huntress, and independent spirit could inspire characters who are drawn from her archetype, strong, fierce, and unapologetically themselves. Her story also offers space for deeper exploration of her internal struggles, perhaps focusing on the tension between her desire for freedom and her connection to others, like Hippomenes. In this sense, Atalanta's myth not only serves as an inspiration for external challenges, but also for the internal journey towards self-realization. Atalanta's impact on modern mythology will likely extend to broader themes as well. Her transformation into a lion, symbolizing both power and captivity, may become an emblem of the dualities of existence: freedom and restriction, independence and dependence, strength and vulnerability. These themes continue to play an important role in the way stories are told today, and they will remain significant as Atalanta's myth continues to evolve. Furthermore, the importance of Atalanta's story in the context of a changing world cannot be overstated. In the future, mythology will continue to be a tool for examining the human condition, and figures like Atalanta will continue to serve as a means of reflection and empowerment. Her myth is not confined to the past. It is a living story that grows and transforms with the world. Her ability to embody both strength and vulnerability, independence and love, will continue to resonate in stories for generations to come. Atalanta's story teaches us that heroism is not confined to a singular definition. It shows us that the journey to greatness is not always about conquering external forces, but about confronting and overcoming internal struggles. Her myth invites us to reflect on our own potential, to find the courage to challenge the status quo, and to embrace the journey, no matter how unexpected or difficult it may be. Atalanta's myth, much like the shifting tides of the sea under Poseidon's rule, has undergone many transformations since it was first told. Over the centuries, it has been shaped and reshaped by those who retold it, each generation adding its own interpretation and influence. Her story, once one of defiance and independence in the face of divine forces, has evolved into a narrative that speaks to the broader struggles of identity, agency, and belonging. Originally, Atalanta's myth was rooted deeply in the hero's journey, a young woman defying the odds, living independently in the wilderness, and gaining recognition for her feats of strength and skill. But over time, as societies evolved and attitudes toward gender and power shifted, Atalanta's story became more nuanced. Her defiance of traditional gender roles became an emblem of both personal autonomy and social critique. As culture moved from classical Greece to the modern world, Atalanta transformed into a symbol not just of independence, but of the power to define one's own fate, even when faced with the divine and the inevitable. The most significant shift in Atalanta's myth occurred with the way her love story with Hippomenes was told. In the traditional retelling, her challenge to suitors to race her for her hand in marriage was an expression of her agency. She chose her partner based on merit, not tradition. Yet, in some modern interpretations, this race has come to symbolize the tension between freedom and human connection. Was Atalanta truly free if she had to challenge suitors, even if they could not meet her expectations? Or did her challenge reflect the human condition, the desire for independence balanced with the need for love and companionship? The evolution of her myth in the context of these questions reveals the complexity of human relationships, especially when autonomy and connection intersect. The later twist, her transformation into a lion with Hippomenes, where they remain together for eternity, is an aspect of the myth that speaks to themes of eternal love and fate. The transformation has been seen by some as a form of punishment, but to others it is an acknowledgement of the strength of their bond and their shared journey through the trials of life. Atalanta's ultimate fate, bound eternally to her lover, invites reflection on the complexities of destiny. Does love, even when forced upon us by divine intervention, somehow elevate us? In modern interpretations, the transformation is seen as less of a punishment and more of a symbolic elevation, representing the endurance of love and the unbreakable nature of the connection between Atalanta and Hippomenes. It is this relationship, forged through trials, that becomes the core of her story in the later retellings. Atalanta's role as a fierce huntress, a strong and independent figure who rejected conventional femininity, also transformed in the eyes of the modern world. In ancient Greece, Atalanta's physical prowess and independence were celebrated, but modern audiences, particularly women, have come to see her not just as an isolated figure, but as an archetype of resistance. She is now seen as a model for breaking free from societal expectations. As gender roles evolve, Atalanta's strength has been reframed, no longer simply about physical prowess, but as an embodiment of the power to resist limitations, whether those limitations are imposed by societal standards, gender expectations, or fate itself. The way Atalanta's myth has been reframed in literature and film further underscores this evolution. She is often portrayed not only as a figure of independence, but also as someone whose challenges with love and her bond with Hippomenes reflect the modern struggle to reconcile personal autonomy with emotional vulnerability. Her myth is less about the external heroism, hunting the boar, winning the race, and more about her internal struggle, It's about defining oneself in the face of overwhelming expectations. This theme of self-definition has become a core part of Atalanta's ongoing relevance, resonating deeply in modern narratives where the protagonist must find their own path amid societal pressures. In contemporary adaptations of her story, Atalanta is frequently portrayed as a symbol of resilience. Rather than just focusing on her mythological feats, modern reinterpretations explore how her personal journey parallels the struggles people face today. In these retellings, Atalanta often represents the desire for self-determination and the fight against societal restrictions, whether they come from tradition, family, or even the pressure of societal expectations for women. These modern adaptations portray her as someone who refuses to be confined by the roles others expect her to play, and instead creates her own destiny, regardless of the forces that try to impose limits on her life. Her myth also serves as a critique of the human desire to define others. Just as Atalanta was constantly defined by the men around her, whether it was through the expectations of marriage or the challenges she faced, modern retellings often explore how society continues to define women and shape their roles. Atalanta's refusal to fit into those roles challenges modern expectations of how women should behave, how they should love, and how they should live their lives. Her myth invites a deeper look at how societal norms limit individual expression, especially when they dictate who we should be or how we should live. In the evolving narrative of Atalanta's myth, her strength has also come to symbolize the power of individuality and the courage to pursue one's own path, even when faced with forces much greater than oneself. She is no longer just a huntress or a mythical figure. She is a symbol of every person, regardless of gender, who dares to defy the limitations imposed upon them and to define their own worth. Atalanta's myth, with its many layers and interpretations, will continue to evolve. As societal values change, so too will the ways in which her story is told. The fundamental themes of autonomy, resistance to constraint, and the negotiation of love and independence remain timeless and relevant. Atalanta's legacy will continue to serve as a powerful reminder that the strength to live authentically, to challenge the world around us, and to embrace both the light and dark parts of our journeys is a legacy worth honoring. Atalanta, the huntress of Greek mythology, has transcended her ancient origins to become a timeless symbol of independence, strength, and the unyielding pursuit of self-determination. Her story, filled with triumphs and trials, speaks to the complexities of the human experience and continues to resonate deeply with modern audiences, especially in the context of feminism. In many ways, Atalanta embodies the very ideals that drive modern feminist thought: the right to choose one's path, the rejection of societal constraints, and the strength to live authentically, regardless of the forces that seek to define or control us. One of the most striking aspects of Atalanta's myth is her defiance of traditional gender roles. In a time when women were expected to fulfill domestic and reproductive duties, Atalanta rejected those confines and carved out her own space in a world dominated by men. Her refusal to marry unless a suitor could outrun her in a race was a radical statement of autonomy. It wasn't just about choosing a husband. It was about asserting control over her own life and making it clear that no man, no matter how powerful, would define her worth. She set the terms of her own life, and in doing so, challenged the very structure of a patriarchal society. In this way, Atalanta has become an icon of feminist empowerment. Her strength, both physical and mental, stands as a counterpoint to the traditional representation of women in mythology and history. In many ancient cultures, women were often depicted as passive or secondary to the heroic feats of men. Atalanta, however, was a hero in her own right. She was an exceptional athlete, a skilled hunter, and a woman who outshone many of the male heroes of her time. In the context of feminism, Atalanta represents the ability of women to be both strong and independent, to challenge the limitations placed upon them, and to demand the same respect that is afforded to men. Her transformation into a lion alongside Hippomenes, while often viewed as a punishment or a curse in traditional retellings, can also be seen through a feminist lens as a form of transcendent transformation. Though her body was changed by the gods, her spirit remained untamed, embodying the very essence of feminine power. Atalanta's eternal bond with Hippomenes, a partner who respected her autonomy and strength, highlights a key message in feminist discourse: the importance of relationships based on mutual respect, equality, and love. It's not the loss of her human form that defines Atalanta's legacy, but her ability to retain her power, independence, and agency even after her transformation. Atalanta's refusal to conform to the roles that society had designated for her is a cornerstone of feminist thought. In the world of mythology, where women were often relegated to supporting roles or depicted as passive figures, Atalanta stood as a beacon of resistance. She chose to live on her own terms, rejecting the limitations placed upon her by those around her. Her story serves as a reminder that women have the right to choose their own paths, to define their own worth, and to challenge the societal norms that seek to constrain them. Moreover, Atalanta's story challenges the notion that women must choose between love and independence. In many traditional narratives, women are often forced to choose between their desires for love and the fulfillment of their own dreams and goals. Atalanta's relationship with Hippomenes, though born from the challenge of a race, demonstrates that love can be an equal partnership where both individuals can maintain their sense of self while sharing a deep connection. In modern feminist terms, Atalanta's story emphasizes the possibility of relationships built on equality and mutual respect, where both partners can support and empower each other without compromising their individuality. Atalanta's influence also extends beyond her mythological story and into the broader conversation about women in history. The way Atalanta lived, wild, free, and unafraid to carve out her own space in a world dominated by men, continues to inspire modern-day feminists and activists. Her myth reminds us of the importance of standing up for ourselves, of not accepting the roles that society seeks to impose on us, and of never underestimating the power of self-determination. Just as Atalanta's refusal to be defined by others made her a hero, modern women who challenge the constraints of society can find strength in their own stories of resistance and resilience. Atalanta's legacy also underscores the importance of recognizing the power of women in mythology. While Greek myths often focused on male heroes and gods, Atalanta's story offers a much-needed counterpoint. Her heroic journey, her independence, and her strength provide a narrative that values women not for their relationships with men, but for their intrinsic worth. By reclaiming Atalanta as a feminist icon, we can reshape the way women are represented in stories, offering new models of heroism that are not limited by gender, but rather defined by the courage to be true to oneself. Atalanta's transformation from a huntress to a symbol of eternal love and strength continues to resonate in modern culture. Her story has inspired countless women to embrace their own power, to challenge societal expectations, and to redefine what it means to be a hero. As we continue to explore the myths and legends of the past, Atalanta's legacy will remain a touchstone for feminist thought, reminding us all that the power to shape our own destinies lies within us, just as it lay within her. Atalanta's myth, which began with the wild forests of Arcadia and unfolded through races, hunts, divine intervention, and eternal love, continues to echo through time and culture, touching the hearts of those who seek a different kind of heroism. Her journey reflects the complexities of identity, defiance, and transformation, offering modern audiences a rich, timeless tapestry of ideas and values. As we reflect on her story in its entirety, it becomes clear that Atalanta's influence is not confined to the past, but stretches into the future, continuously evolving with each retelling, interpretation, and adaptation. Throughout history, Atalanta's myth has been reinterpreted to reflect the concerns and values of each age. In ancient Greece, her story served as a powerful reminder of a woman's potential to transcend the societal expectations placed upon her, especially in a world that largely relegated women to domestic spaces. Atalanta's strength, agility, and courage positioned her as an anomaly in a male-dominated heroic world, showing that a woman could stand equal to the mightiest of male heroes. This transformation of a woman into a hero without reliance on male power or approval has become an essential element of her enduring legacy. In the context of modern culture, Atalanta's myth offers both a critique and a reflection of contemporary struggles for gender equality. Her independence and self-determination speak to ongoing conversations about the roles of women in society, particularly the empowerment of women to assert their autonomy and carve their own paths in a world that still seeks to constrain them. Her race, which symbolizes her demand for equality and agency, is an act of choosing her fate, a message that remains relevant to feminist discourse today. Atalanta is a reminder that women are not prizes to be won, but individuals with their own strength and abilities, deserving of equal respect and choice. Moreover, the way Atalanta's story intersects with love and relationships has prompted deeper reflection in modern interpretations. Her love for Hippomenes, though it is born of a challenge, is ultimately one of mutual respect and balance. In Atalanta's myth, love is not something that diminishes her power but complements it. This relationship model, rooted in equality, resonates with modern ideas about partnership, reminding us that love should never diminish one's identity or independence, but should enhance and support both partners' personal journeys. It challenges the notion that women must choose between love and independence, and suggests that true partnership can arise from mutual respect and shared goals. Atalanta's transition from a mortal huntress to a symbol of eternal love and strength through her transformation into a lion has added layers of meaning to her legacy. Her transformation can be seen as both a literal and symbolic representation of the strength that comes from overcoming adversity. Although Atalanta's life was marked by conflict and divine interference, her final transformation also speaks to themes of transcendence. By becoming part of nature itself, both fierce and majestic, Atalanta's eternal bond with Hippomenes is elevated to a mythic level, showing that love, when it transcends all boundaries, becomes something greater than life itself. This transformation also highlights the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth, a recurring theme throughout many mythologies. Just as Poseidon's ocean currents rise and fall, Atalanta's life serves as a reminder that change is an inescapable part of the human experience. Atalanta, as a lion, embodies the timeless continuity of life's natural forces. She is part of the earth, bound to it for eternity, yet unyielding. Her myth exemplifies the way life can continue to unfold, even after what seems like an end, transforming into something powerful and everlasting. Today, Atalanta's influence is evident in literature, art, film, and popular culture. From modern reimaginings in novels to portrayals in film, her myth continues to inspire characters that share her qualities: strength, autonomy, and a deep connection to the natural world. These contemporary depictions of Atalanta reflect her continued relevance as a cultural figure, a hero who defies the rules and walks her own path, inspiring others to do the same. In a time when representation of strong women in media is more crucial than ever, Atalanta's myth provides the foundation for building more complex, empowered female characters who are capable of heroism in every sense of the word. Atalanta's story also finds resonance in the feminist movements that have swept the world, where her defiance against the gods and society's expectations has become symbolic of women's rights and the demand for autonomy. Her narrative offers a model for challenging established norms, pushing against the constraints of a world that often seeks to define women by their relationships, their roles, or their appearances. Atalanta's journey tells us that the true strength of a hero lies not in conforming to expectations, but in embracing one's own power, courage, and identity. As we reflect on Atalanta's life and her journey, it's clear that she is far more than a figure from ancient mythology. She is a reflection of the ongoing human struggle for self-determination and the courage to embrace one's own path, regardless of societal pressures. Her story, which began in the forests of Arcadia, continues to inspire and resonate today. It reminds us that strength is not just physical, it's also mental, emotional, and spiritual. It teaches us that independence does not have to be solitary, that love does not diminish our power, and that even in the face of overwhelming odds, we can shape our own destinies. Atalanta's legacy, as enduring as the lions she and Hippomenes became, will continue to echo across time, inspiring future generations to live authentically, defy convention, and embrace the wild, untamed forces within themselves. Atalanta's myth is one of defiance, strength, and transformation. Her journey, though shaped by divine forces and extraordinary challenges, ultimately reflects the universal struggles that all humans face. Struggles for freedom, self-determination, and connection. Her story, which began in the wilds of Arcadia, continues to echo through time, resonating with modern audiences who see in her a symbol of resilience and empowerment. From her challenge to suitors, to her defiance of societal roles, Atalanta was not just a hero of the ancient world, but a timeless figure whose actions and choices still speak to us today. Her transformation into a lion with Hippomenes, though born from the intervention of the gods, became a symbol of eternal love, strength, and unity, reminding us that true power comes from within and from the connections we make along our journey. Atalanta's legacy lives on, not only in the myths and stories passed down through generations, but in the countless women and men who draw inspiration from her determination, her courage, and her unyielding spirit. Her myth has evolved, serving as a model for those who refuse to accept the limitations imposed upon them, and a reminder that heroism can come in many forms. Atalanta's story continues to inspire, challenge, and empower, proving that the journey towards self-discovery and freedom is timeless. As we reflect on her myth, we are reminded that we, too, can embody the courage, strength, and spirit of Atalanta. Her legacy teaches us that while the gods may shape our paths, it is our choices, our actions, and our resilience that ultimately define who we are. Atalanta's story, like the wilds she once roamed, remains untamed and eternal, an inspiration for all who seek to live authentically and fearlessly in a world that often seeks to define us.